City Council. Chief, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, tonight's roll call. Cease is excused. Butts?
Here.
Buckland?
Present.
Lane?
Present.
Hickler?
Here.
Osenga?
Here.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item on the agenda is citizen comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing. So the clerk's going to get the list right now. She will call out your name. When you get to the dais, if you could say if you live inside or outside city limits, and you'll have 3 minutes for your comments. Madam Clerk, is anyone signed in?
Madam Mayor, the first signed in is Bruce Joppa.
Thank you.
Mayor, Councilman, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to use an introduction to try to do something that I'm not terribly good at. I told Senator Sullivan recently that I'm sort of a nuts and bolts guy. I build things by putting one foot in front of the other. I don't always look way down the road. I wish I did. I know there are some people that do that. But I do have the advantage of a lot of years and a lot of experience. When I look at the city of Seward, my wife and I came here in 1975. It was 11 years after the earthquake. It was a sleepy town. Our kids didn't have a whole lot of opportunity as they grew into working years, what they could do. My older son got a job with Cindy Eklund on a coffee shop, and then another tourist job, and then another tourist job. The city of Seward has grown like that, and I think many of our young people have an entry level into that kind of activity. It wasn't by accident. There was a lot of hard work that went into the development of infrastructure that brought those ships to Seward and allowed those cruise ship people and tourists to leave their money here so that many of us could make a living. We've seen the Seward harbor grow over years from an inadequate facility when the state owned it to something that today is in the black. It supports itself, it supports the greater economy. That's really what a vision of a community is about. You know, what can we do to make our community grow in the way we want it to grow and provide for us in a way that we think is appropriate? I think we all talk about quality of life. I think many of you have seen Skagway in the winter. They've gone so far that it's almost a boarded up ghost town in the winter. Didn't used to be that way. Nobody wants that for Seward. But we have a balance that's unique. We have infrastructure in our community, we have jobs in public service, we have jobs in private service, and it's growing. One of the things that's going to come before you is the airport. And I'm not going to get into that very much except to say that the community is going to have to make some hard decisions today for the future. And these hard decisions are what we want for our community, and sometimes that means paying for them. Now you can pay for them with time, you can pay for them with money, but somewhere it's got to come. It's got to come from somewhere. So I ask you to keep in mind whenever we have these discussions that we're looking towards the good of our community into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaffa. Is there anyone else signed in, Madam Clerk?
Next signed in is Mary Ann Benoit.
Thank you. Please.
Hello, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Mary Ann Benoit, and I live in the city limits. I'm a business owner. I have 2 businesses, Northern Lights Home Staging and Design and Arctic Paradise Bed and Breakfast. I recently attended a Rotary meeting, which I'm a member of, and Sue Ward came and spoke to us about the Historic Preservation Commission and everything that they're doing. I was totally excited and inspired by that, so I thought I'd like to really get involved in this and see how I can contribute. So I started to attend the commission meetings, and I also applied to be a commissioner. So I just wanted to come in, I think you're voting on that tonight, just to introduce myself and say thanks for your consideration.
Great. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, next.
Next signed in is Carol Griswold.
Thank you.
Hello, Carol Griswold, City Limits. Dear Council, I urge you to remove Ordinance 2020-02 from the consent agenda and to vote to not introduce it. This rezone on 2nd Avenue from residential 1 and 2 to urban residential is an illegal spot zone. The Sewer Zoning Code was enacted prior to the controlling 1996 Alaska Supreme Court decision, Griswold, my brother, versus the City of Homer regarding spot zones and has not been updated. Our code says that any rezone 1 acre or larger that is contiguous to a similar zone is not a spot zone. This has not been the case for the past 24 years. The Alaska Supreme Court ruled that consistency with the comprehensive plan and future zoning map is extremely important to indicate a rational and non-arbitrary action. The plan and future zoning map recommend residential 2. The Alaska Supreme Court ruled that the rezone must show benefits to the community, not just to the petitioners. The petitioners said they would like the option of nightly lodging and an art gallery, uses that are currently prohibited. These are personal benefits and a classic case of illegal spot zoning. There is no urban residential zone contiguous with these properties. Creating an island of property with less restrictive zoning in the middle of properties with more restrictive zoning is spot zoning. In addition, this rezone from single-family residential to urban residential was not posted, noticed in the paper, or otherwise advertised to the public. The Planning and Zoning Commission amended the resolution without any public input and forwarded it to council. Even the petitioners did not ask for UR. The public process was denied. As you know, this rezone has been contentious, even when it originally recommended office residential, requiring a Board of Adjustment hearing, another public hearing before P&Z, which was also disastrous, and which resulted in the surprise rezone to UR. All were considered without addressing illegal spot zoning concerns. Please remove this item from the consent agenda and vote to not introduce it. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Madam Mayor, next signed in is Cindy Eklund.
Good evening, Cindy Eklund, Inside City Limits. Mayor and Council, I'm speaking on the same topic as Ms. Griswold did, the ordinance before you tonight to rezone that portion of 2nd Avenue. But I too do not want it rezoned to urban residential. As requested by more than 50% of the residents of that area, we want it office residential, which would not be spot zoning because the future land use map is changing a portion of 3rd Avenue to office residential that would be right behind part of this, so it would be touching an office residential zone. We have followed the Seward City Code to amend the zoning map, and no one that owns any of the property within that area is opposed to the rezoning to office residential. The majority of the comments from property owners within the 300-foot zone were in favor, and the majority of comments at all 3 of the prior meetings for office residential, and the property was posted for office residential, all done within the code. Most of those comments were for office residential. One person within this area spoke towards housing rental on a nightly basis. That's the only one. I personally am not interested in doing that. I'm interested in having opportunities for entrepreneurship. And the comp plan that has been mentioned several times, the last time that was reviewed and updated was not a good process. We had less people at our meetings than are sitting in this room tonight. We did not have any broad town hall meetings. The contractor that we hired did a poor job of the rewrite. So we're looking forward to our next work session where we discuss the start of that review. I just want to request then that you would amend the ordinance when it comes before you for discussion on the 27th, amend it back to office residential. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, last signed in is Christiana Smith.
Hello, my name is Christiana Smith and I live outside of city limits, and I'm giving my comments to speak on Resolution 2020-004, entering into an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club. And I'm asking that that be taken off the consent agenda to be discussed, because I feel like there's some information in the contract that is either missing, lacking, or mis-entered into. The first thing I noticed was the general requirements of obligations from Boys and Girls Club is that they would provide youth programs for Seward youth ages 6 to 18, and children enter our school system looking for after-school care at age of 5. And so that was a little bit alarming to me, if kindergartners would be allowed the availability to the after-school program that would be operated. The other thing that kind of popped out at me was that there is mention of the $170,000 annual amount that the contract would be written for, and the fiscal note states that the personnel budget for TYC as of right now for 2020 and 2021 is $172,079 and then $76,025 respectively. But yet there's no mention within the contract whether or not annually there would be a discussion on a % increase per year. As we know, cost of living increases, and that usually means that there's supply increases as well. And then a few things I noticed that weren't stated in the contract was the Teen Youth Council that's currently operated, whether or not that would be an obligation of Boys and Girls Club, or whether or not the Teen Youth Council would become a Seward Park and Rec Department initiative, and then also the rental of the facilities that Boys and Girls Club would be using on 3rd Avenue. Currently, they can be rented, and I just wonder, as being a former renter of those spaces for a parenting course this fall as a facilitator, whether or not that facility would be open for rental after this agreement. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, there is no one else signed in.
This is the time for public comments. Is there anyone wishing to make a 3-minute public comment that hasn't been signed in? Yes, please. Inside or outside city limits, and go ahead. State your name, sorry. You can take a breath first.
No, I'm sorry. My name is Susan Swiderski. I'm inside the city limits, and I'm on the blocks that you're discussing. I would like to state that I'm in favor of changing it to OR as opposed to R. UR. That's good.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time? We'll go front row and then back row.
I'll be very quick. My name is Sue Ward. I'm the Vice Chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. And I would just like to state that I'm in support of Mary Ann applying to the commission. She's been at the last 3 or 4 meetings on her own. She hasn't been sworn in, but she has shown a lot of interest. So I would like to stand in support of Mary Ann. Also, I'm here in support of Lee getting his award.
Great, thank you. Maggie in the back?
everyone. I apologize for not signing in. I'm from Outer City Limits, Maggie Wilkins, current director of Boys and Girls Club. I was caught behind this awesome crowd out here. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for all the time you've put into looking at this agreement that we're going to be entering into with the city, hopefully. Scott, thank you for sponsoring. Really appreciate that. I know somebody had to do that. And also for all the work from Tyler, my boss Rachel, Tyler's staff, Irene, and Letitia put in a lot of hours making this come together. It's very well thought out. I know it seems rushed, and I agree that we're trying to get this timeline. We're trying to do it in a manner that's going to be good for everybody. Kids are our first priority, so we want to make sure that this is as smooth and seamless as possible. But it is an aggressive timeline, and we totally understand that. It's not like, February 1, if we get an agreement, that everything's going to change immediately. We're taking the kids' needs and wishes at heart. We're going to meet with them and make sure that they are fully aware of what's going to be happening. We're going to ease them into it. Irene and I have been discussing how we can do that with the current after-school kids. So there's been a lot of care taken trying to make sure this is going to be a smooth transition. I wanted to try and address a few concerns from Christiana, who has a big heart, and she's concerned for good reasons, and I understand. So youth councils, Christiana, I want to make sure that you know that that's going to be Parks and Rec for now. It's too complicated. We didn't want to get into it, and we want to make sure that that thrives and continues to do well. So we're just going to be hands-off on that for now, and that's Parks and Rec. Kindergarten, the language, unfortunately, it is definitely going to be kindergarten through 18. It just, the language isn't, that'd be an easy switch. Just change that to kindergarten. There are some five-year-old kindergartners. So that's an easy one. And then as far as the increase, I think your concerns are totally validated. That's why we're doing this year by year. We're going to start with a year agreement, see how it goes, and then if we need to go back to the drawing board on the amount of money, then we will. It's been really pleasant working with Tyler, and it's been a really great relationship, and I have no concerns about this moving forward. So just thank you guys for your time, and I'm here for questions if you have. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Great, thank you. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I move for the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda.
I second that.
Thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, changes? Councilmember Buckland?
I'd like to remove resolution 20-006. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the one. 20-001.
So ordinance for introduction 20-001 off the consent agenda?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Well, I would, city manager has asked that number C6, schedule a work session to review and discuss the CIP plan, that come off the consent agenda. There's some further information regarding that. And also C7, appoint Marianne Benoit to the Historic Preservation Commission off the consent agenda just because we've had a second applicant. So we'll actually vote on that. So both those off the consent agenda. Are there any other changes? Councilmember Buckland?
I'd like to remove resolution 2020-004.
Thank you.
From consent.
Yes.
From the consent. I would also like to remove item C1, approval of the December 9th City Council regular minutes. Those will come back to us at our next meeting. Are there any other changes? I have two more things. I wanted to take totally off the agenda item C10 and item C11. At that point, those were sent to council, but they weren't put on put on the agenda by a council member or the city manager. So I'd like to take them off for now until there's an actual sponsor to come before the body. Okay? Do I need a motion and a second, or can it be done within? Okay.
I don't object to that. I just want to know, those are things that have always been on there, so now they have to be sponsored.
Well, they haven't always been on there.
Okay.
So they're not coming forward as informational items. They're coming forward with us to take action upon. So there's no one to say.
I understand
Okay,
now.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't explain myself fully. Are there any other changes at this time? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Clerk, if you could call for the vote, please, and then let us know what was finalized.
Okay. So, voting on tonight's agenda and consent agenda. Bosenga?
Yes.
Baklan?
Yes.
Butts?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Mayor Terry?
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda are approved. On tonight's consent agenda, approved and not coming back for discussion, Resolution 2020-003, adopting an alternative allocation method for fiscal year 2020 Shared Fisheries Business Tax Program, and certifying that the allocation method fairly represents the distribution of significant effects of fisheries business activity in the Cook Inlet Fisheries Management Area. Resolution 2020-005, supporting the continuance of the State of Alaska's stringent oil spill prevention and response contingency planning regulations. Resolution 2020-007, officially proclaiming the name Benny Benson Park to the city park located at 1121 3rd Avenue, the area west of 3rd Avenue, bounded by Dairy Hill Lane and Chamberlain Road, comprising the Seward Lagoon, Rotary Pavilion, and Benny Benson Memorial. The Port and Commerce Advisory Board has been continued for the calendar year 2020. There's been a non-objection to the renewal of the following liquor licenses. Number 2683 Package Store for Gateway Liquor and Food Mart. Number 1130 Beverage Dispensary for Thorns Showcase Lounge LLC. And number 3909 Package Store for Seward Marketplace.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next on the agenda is proclamation and awards. And the first one is Lee Pulaski Lifetime Achievement Award. So Mr. Pulaski, you could meet me at the dais, please.
Yeah, there you go, Gil.
Sounds ominous.
Oh, it is. It is. So I want to start off by giving you a small gift from the Vice Mayor. Because you always come up and avail yourself of council candy, so she wanted to make sure you had some. So before I read the proclamation, I want to show that Mr. Pulaski has won the 2019 Historic Preservation Award, awarded by the Alaska Association of Historic Preservation in recognition of excellent in historic preservation in Alaska lifetime achievement. So I want to put this up here while we're reading our proclamation. It's going to do it. Don't breathe. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. Okay. So whereas Mr. Pulaski accepted a teaching job at Seward High School shortly after the Great Alaska Earthquake of 1964, whereas he combined his love of history and his love of photography and began making small movies of interesting Seward landmarks, history, and people who contributed to Seward's success. And whereas Mr. Pulaski was instrumental in forming both the original Seward Museum and the Resurrection Bay Historical Society. Whereas he was a volunteer for director of curator of the original Seward Museum for more than 30 years. You're not that old, are you?
No.
And both of the current museum collections are still those collected and curated by him. Whereas Mr. Pulaski published the Resurrection Bay Historical Society newsletter for several years, and whereas he created the Obituary Index, which contains more than 2,600 obituaries and final resting places of past Seward residences, and whereas for the past decade, Mr. Pulaski has led the popular Solstice Cemetery Tour, where he guides folks to various graves, reads the obituaries of the deceased, and elaborates on their lives to give the audience a deeper understanding of each person's life. And whereas he was central contributor to the formation of the Seward Trailblazers, and he continues to help guide the preservation and resurrection of the southern portion of the Iditarod National Historical Trail, and whereas Mr. Pulaski has contributed half a century of research and service to the preservation and understanding of Seward area's history, and whereas the Seward community is grateful to Mr. Pulaski for his tireless efforts, his contributions add meaning and understanding to small community life in Alaska. Whereas he was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Alaska Association of Historic Preservation in 2019. Now, therefore, I, Christy Terry, Mayor of the City of Seward, do hereby recognize and congratulate Lee Pileski for being awarded the Alaska Association of Historic Preservation's Lifetime Achievement Award and acknowledge your lifetime of exemplary volunteer service to the City of Seward and its citizens in the preservation of our history. So, thank you very much. I think
Are you gonna time this or?
No, you deserve as much
No,
time
no,
as
you guys got a long night ahead. I was thinking, this all started here. Was in, I think, August or October. Probably October of 1968. Some of us can remember that. Marge Carter, who was a fellow teacher up at high school, said, invited me to a meeting of the Resurrection Bay Historical Society, which I had never been to. They were meeting at the basement here of City Hall, the northern section. It was an empty room, big empty room. The city had said you can have it for a museum. And I went, and there were some, well, I'll probably forget some, but I mean, Rachel Puckett, many of these some of you have never heard of, but Rachel Puckett and Luella James and Pat Williams and Hazel Ray, who was Pat's mother. Virginia Darling, very much so. Lillian Wilkins, who always enjoyed playing the organ. We had down there some Scott Joplin tunes on the organ down there. She was wonderful. They were all very nice, very persuasive. As you can see, that was 1968. I'm still here with it. They talked me into it, and over the years, there have been many people who have helped, volunteered their time and their knowledge. It was a little easier to do research then. You just asked them. Hazel Ray, she had been there forever. They could tell you it's a little harder nowadays. But anyway, a lot of people in both groups have done it. The Trailblazers are sort of this happened here too. Now, we had a meeting in, I think it was October, it might have been September of 1972. And Dan Seaton, who was a member of the Historical Society, told us about this plan some dog mushers had of organizing a race from Anchorage to Nome of around 1,000 miles. And he was looking for support from the community. And I'm proud to say the Resurrection Bay Historical Society paid his entry fee for that first Iditarod race. It was $100, but $100. We weren't rich. So we had a small part in that first race. I admit I thought it was kind of a
harebrained idea.
Well, I went. Oh, you said I didn't. But it's still going, just like the museum keeps going. So yeah, it's been interesting. When I came here, and I have to say that, in August of 1964, landed. Again, some people not remember, there used to be daily air service to Seward. Dover Airlines would fly, weather permitting, I have to add that. Because I remember got stuck in Anchorage once. But anyway, just teach at Seward Public Schools. Again, it was not yet in the borough. There are not many of us left here to talk about that Seward Public School. Next, 65, 66, we went into the borough for good or bad in the school system. Of course, talking about the school, I am proud that two former students are sitting here on the city council running running things. I have to tell, Sue and I started together. She was a freshman. I was a teacher. She's much smarter than I am. She got out in 4 years. It took me 26. Anyway, thank you, and thank everyone. And thank all the people over the years for their aid and help in both the museum and the Seward Iditarod Trailblazers. And things I should mention, get a little dig here. There is the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance, a statewide group. City of Nome, the city of McGrath, the city of Ruby belong to the association. I don't know if the Seward is willing to spring $50 to
join the crowd. It seems since Nome is there, we should be there. We're the other side. Get a little commercial in there. Okay, thank you again, thank you.
Basketballers, I want you to come and stand in front of the decks. So come stand right in front so we can see you. Filter in, come, one of them stand all along. You start here, baby brother, and then we'll go all around. Get in there. Okay, so I'll have the coach come stand here to get the... So before we do this, I want to go around and each of you to say your name and your position. You guys do positions?
We don't really do positions.
Okay, then
Everybody
say...
works kind of all around.
Okay, say your name and go around. Okay, start here. Okay.
Bergen Davis. Ethan Williams.
Benjamin Brandiani.
Derek Sanical.
Nicholas Ambrosiani.
Ryder Allen.
Great. So what I'm going to read today, I'm going to give these to your coach at the end. So you guys will each have one of these proclamations, okay? So who's this guy right here? Coach Bash. And all the parents. So whereas Seward Middle School boys basketball team lost every game in the 2018 basketball season, which that's kind of tough to start out, which motivated the 2019 team to work hard and improve their basketball skills. And whereas the quest of these 15 young men to be more competitive resulted in them beating every school in the Kenai Peninsula Borough and winning the 2019 Borough Middle School Championship, whereas this is the first boys basketball championship since Seward Middle School opened its doors as an independent school in 2005, and whereas the Seward Middle School of the City of Seward and City of Seward are very proud of the Seward Silvers boys basketball team for their great accomplishment, and whereas this would not have been possible without the guidance of Coach Cody Beck, who trained and practiced with the team and motivated them to always do their best. And this isn't in the proclamation, but I would also say it's also due to all the commitment of the parents who are standing here today, and your principal and all your teachers. So now, therefore, I, Christy Terry, Mayor of the City of Seward, Alaska, do hereby congratulate the Seward Silvers boys basketball team and Coach Beck, and commend them for their hard work and perseverance. So you guys have a proclamation and a picture and a proclamation to take home. So I'll give this to you, sir. And then I wonder if you want to say a few words.
You know, we had the same crew basically as we had last year. And so that was, you know, that was no change there. I think we lost one. Was it Ozzy? Ozzy? And what? Connor. And Connor. Okay, so 2 8th graders difference from last year. So we got guys coming up, and the 7th graders really contributed this year, and all around, you know, basically it's just a product of, again, hard work. These kids are coachable, and they were coachable for me, and that was the big difference. And they're all about the team. There's no, obviously no I in team, you know, we've heard that. And these guys are a product of that, so, yeah. Great job, guys.
Thank you very much, guys, and thanks for waiting in the hall. You guys were really good out there. So, yeah, do you want Cody Beck to stand up there? Hey, Cody, you get in the middle, and then they'll get a picture. Okay, smile for your parents. Okay, thank you so much, guys. We appreciate you coming. Good job, guys. Nice job. Good job, guys. Good job, guys. Good job, guys. Good job, guys. I'm happy. Good job, guys. Excellent job. Good job. So I'm excited to see those guys in 50 years. Like, one of those guys. Wow, we are just having the best proclamations tonight because now the next one is the Seward Polar Bear Jump. Yay! Thank you, guys. So exciting. Oh yeah, where's Marilyn? Yeah, you guys Oh, she's tired.
Can't do without Mary.
We can't start without you. Okay, so whereas the Polar Bear Jump Off started in Seward in 1986 and is a weekend-long festival that includes silent auctions, turkey bowling, and a parade, as well as a jump into the near-freezing waters of Resurrection Bay. And whereas the mission for this annual event is to raise pledges which help provide cancer patients and their families with information and support, fund research that leads to improved treatments, provide education in cancer prevention and early detection, and help ensure that everyone has access to life-saving cancer screenings and support for eliminating cancer in our society. And whereas the funds raised by this event assist the American Cancer Society Western Region, and the funds raised through the other weekend events directly benefit the Kenai Peninsula children and cancer, and whereas it is through the hard work and dedication of all the volunteers and jumpers that help ensure that more people survive cancer so that they can celebrate another birthday. Now therefore I, Christy Terry, Mayor of the City of Seward, Alaska, do hereby proclaim Saturday, January 18th, 2020 at 12:30 p.m. as the 35th Annual Polar Bear Jump Off at the Seward Boat Harbor, and I do commend all of the volunteers, supporters, and jumpers who participate in the festival. Great job, ladies. Now I wonder if one of you would be so kind to make an announcement. Yeah, thank you.
I haven't seen any of you out there jumping.
Hey,
I've seen you in the bay.
I jumped 2 years. 2 years. Yeah,
Jump
2 years.
2, yep.
See, that's great. And you
I swim.
Yeah. From the fire department. And I've been doing the volunteers since 2000. And even if you don't jump, there's so much other things to do with the polar bear. And we can use volunteers during the weekend, this weekend, if you need to have something to do and stay inside warm. Otherwise, bundle up. The jumpers are going to be jumping. The bay's a little cold right now, but I think they might clear it up. I don't know. But it's a lot of fun. The whole weekend there's something going on. So come out and enjoy the day.
Great, thank you so much. Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is the city manager's report.
See, I was gonna bring up that couple of items that weren't in your packet, just real quick. The electric department, we're trying to get those tours arranged. So we did pull those other items from the agenda at the end for Seaview. I don't know if you want to talk about this or wait until then.
Well, let's talk about whatever you have under your report.
Okay, so let's see, the one thing I did want to get some directive on, because we don't have time to wait till the next report, is touring to Juneau. So if council has interest in sending representatives to Juneau for the AML conference and to work with our lobbyists, I would need some kind of direction on that if there's interest or directive.
Okay, should we go ahead and discuss that right now? Yeah, okay, well, let's go ahead and discuss that right now. So I think there's some information in front of us on cost and timing and also the agenda. As a laydown? As a laydown. I have it. So maybe I'll look to the clerk if you want to speak to what you put before us today.
So the AML Winter Conference is happening in Juneau, February 18th through the 20th. Historically, council sends 2 people from council, and then the city manager attends. The cost this year went up just a little bit. The conference fee went from $125 to $150 per person. And based on last year's, I put together some figures based on last year's travel costs. So it's 3 days of session. You go down the day before and potentially come back the day after the conference is over, just because that's a potential based on the air arrangements we can make. It's approximately $1,400 per person to attend. And like I said, it is, historically, we send 2 people.
Madam, Vice Mayor?
Well, I'd like to recommend that the mayor go for sure.
I can make myself available to go February. Is there anyone else interested in attending?
I would like to go.
Councilmember Buckland is interested. Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Is there anyone else interested? Councilmember Osinga? So traditionally, we've sent 2 total. What's the will of the council? Maybe that's the first question. Councilmember Osinga?
I would say if you're going to be able to make the time to go, then I would say that it's the city manager and yourself, the mayor, that would attend. We're going to try and keep it to the 2 people that we traditionally send, then I think that's my personal opinion.
Just to clarify, it's 2 people from council. The city
Oh,
manager
okay, gotcha,
represents-
okay, then I take that back.
Okay. Is that, so I'll look to the dais. What's the wishes of how many to send, I guess, is the first question. Vice Mayor?
I would say no more than 2, just cost-effective wise, and having been to the AML in Juneau multiple times, I think that's pretty much plenty of people to send down for bang for the buck, so.
Councilmember Butts?
I feel it's also the right amount of people there too. When you start visiting our representatives down there, it's the right amount of people to kind of squeeze into one office. Get too many and just become too much of a group, yeah.
I'll look to this side of the dais. Are there any comments on number of people to send?
I would agree with that too.
Councilmember Lane?
What we have spoken to in the past is the importance of making use of resources when the resources come to Seward. And there have been a number of opportunities lately wherein council members have taken advantage of those. And I would like to see those same council members then take advantage of those relationships that they have been building.
So to the question of how many to send, did you have?
3.
3 total?
3
from
total,
council?
yes.
Okay, so let's have a motion and a vote on the number to send, since there's not a consensus. Is there a motion? Yep.
I'll move that just for a motion, I'll move that we send 2 people from council to Juneau.
Do you have the second?
Second.
Is there discussion? I think you'll second your comments that you just made.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Is there any other comments?
This is just having to do on
Councilmember.
the number. I feel that there has been 3 people on the dais who have represented Seward immensely in the last year, who have been present at a lot of meetings with the community, not just with the community being nonprofits, with other organizations throughout the community, as well as economic meetings. I do now believe that maybe we should send 3 people. I think this is a very important session. I've done a lot of research on why I would like to go, but I do agree now with Councilmember Lane that maybe 3 would be able to go, or should be able to go.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Councilmember Butts?
Well, like I was mentioning before, as having done this a couple different times there too, of having a lot of the offices that you end up going to there too, they're not very big offices, and it's only room for about 2 or 3 people to be there and sit down. And so that's one of the things there too. And with this one there too, and I realize that that we want to send out as many people as possible and as many people to get down there as possible too. You know, we're looking at it fiscally there too. Honestly, it's not a huge thing in our budget there too, but we do have another trip that's going, you know, in April that's going down to Washington DC at the time there too. And typically we've sent, if somebody goes to Juneau, we don't typically send those people on then to Washington DC. They don't take both trips there too during the year too. So I think maybe reserving one of those people to go to Washington rather than just going to Juneau.
Madam Clerk, can we take a vote if the discussion's fine on the number of people to send?
Voting on the motion to send 2 people to AML. Buckland,
No.
Lane,
No.
Buds,
Yes.
McClure,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion is approved, so you'll send 2 people.
Okay, so let's talk about, I'll just throw out there, Councilmember Osenga, I would like to see you go to Washington DC in April. I don't know how you feel about that, but knowing that you went there last year, that would be my preference. And I just want to disclose, I would not be able to go in April. I have a daughter graduating from high school, and I need to stay in town during, it's getting too close to graduation. So I'll just throw that out for discussion. I don't know if we can get to a consensus on having someone go to Juneau, or if we need to vote on that. Vice Mayor, you're just taking a breath?
Yeah.
Councilmember Osenga?
I will go ahead and just recommend the same, what I said earlier, which was the mayor and the city manager.
This side of the dais, I'm assuming both of you would still like to attend Juneau.
I would like to attend Juneau, and we had significant cost savings regarding AML because so many of us weren't able to make that work schedule-wise. And what I'd like to say is I look at my finances last night, and I just realized how much being on council has cost me financially. And so I don't say that to complain, I just say it to say when council goes on these trips, there's a cost to the taxpayers and there's also a cost to the council members. And I really appreciate, like when Councilmember Osenga went to DC last year, I'm sure that was a cost to you and it's a cost to your family. So thank you for being willing. And in terms of the numbers that we're looking at here, I have a place to stay and I also have a flight option that costs significantly less than this. I think that going to Juneau at this time in the history of our state is really important. And I'm grateful that you're willing to go. I'm a little surprised because I thought previously you had said you wouldn't go to Juneau, but I may have misunderstood. And I'm really curious to hear more from you about what you'd like to accomplish because it's been a question that was asked of me.
I did not say I would not go to Juneau. Okay. And what I'd like to accomplish is obviously our priorities that we've put forward as our state priorities. And then if you look, what AML is discussing is state budget. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're greatly affected by that just with childcare issues, affordable health care, affordable housing, affordable health care with our healthcare system, and then also, meeting with Machiki last week, we talked about safety and police force outside city limits. So those would all be things that I'd be dealing with. Councilmember Buckland?
I'd be willing to make a motion to send the mayor and Councilmember Lane to Juneau.
I'll second that.
Okay. We'll vote on that.
I'm sorry, what was that? Motion?
The motion is to send the mayor and Councilmember Lane to Juneau.
Okay, so discussion on the motion? I would just say my preference is to go with Councilmember Buckland to Juneau, but we can vote on the motion at hand. Yes?
Yeah, my preference would also be to send Councilmember Buckland. I'm just so impressed with the amount of research that he's done, and his personability skills are incredible. I think he'd be an awesome representative, and I think that the two of you make a really strong team. So I too, with apologies, would have to vote against your motion.
Councilmember Osenga?
Never mind, I don't know how to say this without, I'll think on this. Go, never mind.
Let's vote on the motion.
Voting on the motion to send mayor and Councilmember Lane to Juneau. Buckland,
Yes.
Osenga,
No.
Lane,
No.
McClure,
No.
Butts,
Yes.
and Mayor Terry.
No.
That motion has failed.
Councilmember, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor?
Then I'll make a motion to send the mayor and Councilmember Buckland to Juneau.
Second.
Any further discussion? Yes,
Just
Councilmember
a
Olsen.
question. And I don't know how to ask this the right way, and I'm not, no one's offense, but the city manager is pretty much neck deep in everything that we're dealing with here as far as budgeting and our state requests and all of our initiatives. And I'm not saying anything bad about any council member up here, but I just feel that it should be, well, somebody who's basically neck deep in everything that we're dealing with here, that we want.
So let me just clarify. So, City Manager, you're planning on attending even if 2 council members attend, is that correct?
I would like that to be directed, if that's
Okay.
what you choose, rather than just saying
I guess I'm confused. I thought we said 2.
So,
From council.
2 from council? I thought it was always
Yeah.
2 from council.
Historically, council has sent 2 members of the council.
And the city manager goes.
And the
Plus-
city manager goes on his own.
Okay.
Sorry.
I took that the wrong way because I
Sorry.
thought we were limiting it to 2 people total, not just 2 council members. Since that's the way it always has been,
Okay,
then I would have thought that
okay.
that
Sorry,
wording
that
should have
wasn't
been
clear.
made. Okay.
so let's take a pause. So Councilmember Osenga, do you have a reconsideration? Do we need to go back and look at something, which is fine?
No.
Okay,
No, I understand now. I am good.
okay, thank you, Councilmember. Vice Mayor McClure?
Should I modify or amend my motion to say, to send the mayor, Councilmember Baclan, and the city manager, and recommend that the city manager go, so then we can give direction that way? To Juno?
I'll look to agreement from the second.
Second?
I think that's a great directive. It makes it very clear.
Then it's in
Is there any further discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, would you please call for a vote?
Okay. Voting on the motion to send Mayor and Councilmember Baclan and directing the city manager to attend AML Juno. Lutz?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Baclan?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
And Mayor Terry?
Yes.
That motion is approved.
Thank you. So let's get back to the city manager's report. Do you have additional items on your report, sir?
I just, only if you have questions at this point. I know we have a lot of other items to get through tonight.
Are there any questions for the city manager? Councilmember Baclan?
I just want to say that I reached out to Scott about the purchasing, and I got great answers from him today. I want to thank him for making that time available for me, and he's looking into ways that we can bring back the purchasing notes that are safe and in a good way for the
So we
city.
do have 5 since the last meeting that we'll bring to the next meeting in a revised format.
And that was in regards to the laydown, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Butts?
And then I just had one question on number 11 on yours, either to about the new software for the harbor. So I just wanted to make sure that this new hardware is not going to be for resident. This is not going to change anything for what we have for resident slips right now.
No, it's not going to change anything for resident slips. What it is going to help us determine our biggest complaints out of the harbor are people forget that they're on the daily rate. You got to pay in advance to get the monthly rate. Our old system would let us know. There's a lot of boats that are transient that we can't go line by line to see. This is one of the biggest things here. And it's the old marina package like we had before, way back when. It's the same lady but her own company, and it's much easier to work with. We sent people to Homer. Homer loves it. Cordova's moving to it. It's a great program. So.
Is this anything that, I'm sorry if I may, Madam Mayor, is this anything that would allow people to get off of transient and into more resident, or is it?
No,
that
it's
really
the same process. You go, you get on the wait list to get a permit slip. That
Okay.
process is not going to change.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple questions if they're not for you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Councilmember Lane, do you have a question?
I do. I have 2 just small housekeeping things, and I'm wondering about the electric department ride-alongs, if we have an answer on that, and maybe you could just give that to us when we do the electric work session next Monday. If,
So that's a question I had. So you alluded to it briefly, but could you talk about more? You're working with the department head to arrange a tour?
So we were looking to try to do that between the hours of 7 and 3:30 during a workday. We could actually take the council, if you could get a portion of you or a majority of you, or maybe do it twice, take you through all of the facilities, maybe fire up the generator so you kind of see what happens there, and get an idea about some of the infrastructure projects and that type of thing.
Do we want to set that date right now? Councilmember Lane?
I just want to clarify that, sorry to be a stickler, that's not what I had asked about 6 months ago. I asked for a ride-along to see what's happening in the same way that the police work. So if you're changing it, I'd just like to know why and how that looks. And I think it really would be better to have this at the work session as a discussion. And then I have a second item, which is we received a really sweet letter from Obahiro, and I'm wondering if our city manager or if our city clerk could reciprocate with some holiday letters to our diplomatic ties.
So that was the letter that Christmas card that they sent. Do we send Obahiro a Christmas card?
We absolutely do.
Okay.
And what about Kushiro and Yosu?
Everyone.
Everyone?
Yes.
Thank you.
we do.
Appreciate it.
On your behalf.
Thank you.
So, I just would like to settle this tonight. Is there a way that the electric department head, because I know there's some liability issues with linemen, but is there a way for the electric department head to take Councilmember Lane on a drive around?
We can arrange that. It would be something where we require anybody that does a drive along with the police department, they even do that. You can't get out.
Yeah.
It would be just kind of a tour.
Yeah.
I can arrange for that.
Okay.
I think we still want to try to do the tour of the facilities.
Well, so I will say that as a council member, I don't know that I am supportive of a council member going along a ride around with linemen. I'm fine with, but I'm just one person. I think I'm fine with the department head, but our active working linemen would be a different story for me.
So can I just make a suggestion, Madam Mayor, about I know I'm not the electric department, but so if you want to have the generators run, you schedule your time when they do their monthly maintenance where they fire it up, because it costs a lot of money to run it. You don't want to run it 2-3 times, just want to run it once during their usual maintenance, so just want to throw that out there.
Sure. Councilmember Blunt.
I know that it's typical for the council members to go on a tour of the facilities, and I still would like to go on that.
Yeah.
So even if you still, I don't know where that lays right now. I know that I think everybody else has been on one, but I haven't seen those things. And also I see city employees around, and I'm like, they don't know who I am. So I just want to meet them. I would still like to go on the facilities tour.
So, we'll go back to Councilmember Lane. So, to Councilmember Baclans and your suggestion, can we schedule that tonight?
I would rather hold off till we have when the generator usage is going to.
So, but here's what because this keeps getting kicked down, so I hear your suggestion. We've talked about it a number of times, so I don't know if, a work session doesn't have to be brought back to council, but the city manager, if you could coordinate with the city clerk's office and get that going. Okay. Councilmember Baclan?
The last time they had it, I believe, Linda Paquette was new on, and then they took the new members of that board too, so maybe asking the other people who might be interested would make it more worthwhile, so it's not just me.
I think that's a great idea, because I would like to attend. I haven't been on it either.
Okay, well there you go.
So, is there enough of a head nodding and direction that the city manager will set that up with the city clerk to include applicable boards and commissions and new members and anyone that would like to attend? And we need to ensure that that is open public, so any contact, the public should be allowed to attend that also. Okay, now going back to Councilmember Lane's, because this has been a long discussion, Councilmember Lane, could, as a starting point, we have you go on a tour with that department head and then see if that works for you? And then even go to where the linemen are?
My response is that something is certainly better than nothing. Mm-hmm. And when I asked to do a police ride-along, I may be wrong, but I doubt that I would end up with Chief Clements.
Through the manager, you can have. Okay.
I wouldn't, Councilman Lane, through the mayor, I'd want you to ride with my patrolman and not me. And absolutely, because I don't work that much road stuff out there anymore. What you want to do is see these guys, how they respond to crime, investigations, and that kind of stuff that they do daily, that you have an opportunity to see. So I have no problem with that.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, well, if it's not an issue for linemen either,
I would say that it is because of safety and electrical. That's not an appropriate
I'm
place.
having Councilmember Billy. I'm just having a hard time understanding how going along with a patrol officer who could potentially involved with guns and staying in the vehicle
Right?
is less dangerous
Well, you-
than being in
so
the
at this
vehicle
point,
of a
let's,
lineman.
okay, Councilmember Osenga?
My only comment is that it is inherently more dangerous with electricity, I would think, just with the way things are going, what's happening. The possibilities are endless. A police ride in Seward, I don't think we would be too worried about driving around in Seward during the day as much as you would be with any possible accident that could happen with a lineman or with equipment or something. That, I mean, it's just too much of a risk, I think.
Okay, so we're discussing this. Councilmember Lane, would you like to make a motion and get a second, and we can just take a vote on a direction?
I would like to make a motion to direct the city manager to set up ride-alongs for the electric department and council members with the linemen.
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Butts?
Okay, so I'm just, I guess I have to, the purpose of the ride-along would be to gather information? I'm just not sure.
We will be doing a work session about the electric utility. The current structure of our electric utility is that we are effectively the board of directors. And we have very little understanding or information about how that works. It's a major part of our city's operation. And there's this real delicate balance between getting too involved in personnel and also just basically understanding how the structure works. So what happens when the linemen are called out? What does it look like? We've negotiated wages. We really have so little information. For me, as an experiential learner, that's just how I learn, is going and watching and observing. And my goal is to just have a better understanding. And I've said many times that I learn differently and I think differently. So I'm asking for something that I believe would be good for the entire board, and I believe that in other areas where utilities have boards of directors, they have greater opportunities for training and observation, and I believe that we should have that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
If
Councilmember
I may,
Betts?
just a comment there too, and I can understand there too about getting that type of information. I think that during our work sessions, that's where if we need to bring a lineman in to gather that right information. I think the information at the work sessions, we shouldn't micromanage the city, so I don't think we should be getting into the way too far down into the weeds of this information. I understand that the lineman may have some perspective, and I think that that's a perspective that we could use, but if we had that lineman at the meeting. I don't think it needs to be in the field of learning there too. Honestly, what I've dealt with the electric department, it's not a real exciting, dealing with, death every day, but I mean, it is, they've got a lot of things to do during the day too, and so sometimes they'll spend the whole day doing on one project, and you will never see the entire scope of what's going on of working on one small project.
Any further discussion? Can we get a vote on the motion, please? Could you repeat the motion and then we'll have a vote?
Voting on the motion to direct the city manager to set up ride-alongs for council members with electric linemen. Baclan?
Yes.
Butts?
No.
McClure?
No.
Lane?
Yes.
Osenga?
No.
Mayor Terry?
No.
That motion has failed.
Are there any further motions? I have one more item to bring up with the city manager. We got notice about a 2020 economic forecast luncheon in Anchorage, Wednesday, January 29th. The city has attended in the past. Tables are about $900. I don't know if council has any interest in attending or not, so I thought I would just bring it to the dais. Is there any interest? That would be a 10-person table for $900.
I don't remember this happening.
it was brought to my attention. This has been in the past. They have them every year. It's the Anchorage Economic Forecast Luncheon. Yes.
We just had an economic outlook forum here in Seward, and 3 council members attended. It was awesome, and it cost us no dollars.
Great, thank you. And then, under the city manager's report, I was wondering if we want to have Bruce Jafflin maybe speak about the meeting, or we could wait till later in the agenda. How did you want to do that?
About the airport.
About the airport meeting? Unless, did you want to make comments now, or are you saving your comments till later?
I was going to wait till
Okay.
the item comes up.
Okay. So are there any further questions for administration? Okay, seeing none. City attorney report.
I would like to make a motion
Yep.
for recess, please.
Okay, 5-minute recess?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, it is 8:05. We'll recess until 8:10. we're done with the city manager's report. We're on to the city attorney report. That starts on page 18. And she will be here, our city attorney will be here at the second meeting in January. I don't know if there's any questions we want on the record for her to answer, or we'll just see her at the second meeting in January. Is there any questions about the report included in the packet?
I have a question, but it's for another thing, but I guess we can just ask her administration later.
Okay, if you're sure, we can put it on the record if you'd like something. Okay, thank you,
Or
Councilman.
if you just send me an email, I can forward
Okay.
that on.
Thank you, thank you both of you. Next is other reports and presentations. Tell Alaska presentation by Jason Louvier. Did I say that correctly? Hi, welcome. And then, so we're excited to have you. Thank you for coming, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation. And then if we have any questions following that, it doesn't count against your time. So welcome.
Jason Louvier, my boss, wasn't able to make it. My name's Harlan Newman, supervisor for this area. So anyway, I just wanted to give a presentation on the
yay.
satellite. It's not turned on. Nice. Hello? There you go. Okay. I just wanted to give a presentation on what we accomplished this summer. So what is a satellite earth station? It's frequently referred to as a telecommunication port or a teleport. Ground-based system that enables communication over one or more satellites. What do we hope to achieve with this? With our new teleport, we are meeting the wireless and broadband needs of customers statewide. We are supporting telehealth schools across rural Alaska, and we're reducing costs by eliminating the need for additional transport from California to Alaska. That was how we used to transport. Now everything's based out of here. And we're to improve services by reducing latency, increasing capacity. Why Seward? It's one of the main hubs where several year-round employees reside, and establish working relationships with support entities such as local utilities. Access to terrestrial fiber network and the road system. So that was Why Seward. This was the installation this summer. We had crews from stateside come in and assemble our satellite, and we had local crews build our foundations and do all of our dirt work for us. All was local. And completed. We're online as of November, mid-November. We're online and providing communications throughout the state. From right out backside of the pit bar is where we're at.
Okay, that was my question.
And that's, this is interior, what it looks like inside of our facility. Next one, and that's really all I got. We just wanted to give you guys up to date on what we did this summer and what we accomplished, and we're online and really happy with the results. So any questions?
I have a comment. I should have welcomed you better. So if you could just, again, state your name, because I'm so happy to have you. You live here in Seward with your family. You're even better than your boss to come today. So,
I'm in the city limits,
Yes.
Harlan Newman, 1901 Jesse Lee. Me and my family moved here 6 years ago, and so been here for a while.
Thank you.
It's a good town.
I do have a question, because I'm very excited when anyone puts money in infrastructure in Seward. So if it's proprietary, that's fine. I'm just curious if you could talk about how much the installation cost, even if it's ballpark figures. It sounds like you had a crew here building it, so that's great income to our city. So maybe flesh out some of that would be great.
I'll just say over $1 million for the facility, is for sure. And we had a lot of our crews from Anchorage that was helped build it. The local Alaska crew did a lot of the work, but we had locals, and then we did bring people from out of state to erect the satellite. It was a very fun project, for sure.
Great. Are there any? I have one more question, but I don't want to monopolize. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I just have a statement. It's nice to have a face to my neighbor now.
Yeah.
I've seen the
I see it
truck
pass
and,
all the time.
hey.
And so, I'm not very technologically advanced, but so talk about what the impacts are to local users and then statewide with the new infrastructure.
Yeah, local users, Seward doesn't really gain anything. We gain it by the facility here.
Yeah.
Utilities, we're chewing up some electricity really good. Statewide, we have 21 facilities within our own company that's utilizing this, and then we have customers on top of that. So telemedicine, broadband, so everybody's really excited when we finally came online to get them better services. So.
Awesome, thank you. Are there any further questions? Thank you. Great. No, thank you so much for coming tonight. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Next on the agenda is Historic Preservation 2019 Annual Report by Chair Cheryl Cease. Is she in the? She's not here today. So it's also in the packet on page 20. So I know that they're doing great work. I just want to read into the record just really quick since it's here. They've been working on Seward inventory of historical sites. They've pursued installation of historical signage, public outreach. And I know that soon in the spring we have our joint meeting with them, that those will be set up in March. So we'll hear more from them, but we appreciate them putting a report in the packet. Council, or Vice Mayor, I'm sorry.
I'll just add something. We had, as the Resurrection Bay Historical Society, supported their funding for, or asking for funding for a CLG grant, and we've just updated that, and it's all turned in for your packet. So as an aside, that's not a council action, but just so you know. Thank you.
I might pause for a second. I know that Councilmember Lane hasn't returned from the break. I don't know if there's someone in the audience that could go check on her. I don't want to send a police chief. I don't think that's appropriate. Okay. Just make sure that she's okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 7, public hearings, resolution requiring a public hearing. Madam Clerk, could you read that title into the record, please?
Resolution 20-006 is determining it to be in the public interest and necessary to proceed with the proposed utility improvement district for and benefiting lots 1, 2, 3, 4, Block 3, and lots 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, and 44, Block 2 of Gateway Subdivision in an amount not to exceed $337,375 and appropriating funds.
Okay, and while we'll get a motion in a second, at the end, we'll be postponing this to come back for a second public hearing. But the first thing we need is a motion and a second.
I move for the approval of Resolution 2020-006.
Second?
Second, thank you. So right now, which I think, I wanted to make sure that, does administration have any comments?
No, so ironically, Jackie stepped out. This
Yeah.
is an item I was going to have her talk about.
There she is.
Oh, yeah.
The fiscal note, if you'll see, we have the appropriations identified, split between the general fund, utilities, and the electric fund. That full amount there is obligated is that rebate that we had talked about previously. I don't know if you recall that. And it is an introduction, so there doesn't have to be a big thorough discussion at this point, but if Jackie has anything to add,
Any questions? I mean, I can answer anything.
Councilmember
Oh,
LaCroix?
anyway. I know this was drafted between community development and the attorney.
Yep.
This is for their statements. It's not for discussion yet for the
Okay,
council.
so they can't even ask questions during the administration comments?
It's for them to present.
Okay, so is there, maybe before, could you maybe flesh it out a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I'm sorry that I stepped out. We weren't able to locate Miss Lane, so just so you know that. And then for the overall of what this assessment district is, I know that there's been some confusion in the past between the difference between an assessment district and the development reimbursement. So we need to just take the development reimbursement off the table for this portion and see that this is just phase 1 of an assessment district and code's very specific on how we move forward with assessment districts. This recommendation for you this evening is for a total of 11 lots, and I put a large map behind you and also handed out maps. So you could see that the 11 lots that are affected are owned by one individual. The other lots that are right in front of it have the accessibility to utilities, so they were not included in this assessment. Those have been some questions that have been asked of me, so I wanted to make it really clear that where the utilities lie, so you can see that this 11 lots in the agreement that we have with the individual, we will take the total cost once we find out if it's approved, and we'll go in and get the project done, and then we'll divide that cost by those 11 lots, and we will then place that payment to be made when the lot sells. And if the lot doesn't sell, then the owner of the lots will start to make payments on that assessment.
Thank you. So if that's the end of your comments, do you have a further comment?
I just wanted to say that, so today, Councilmember Baclan reached out to me, which I thoroughly like to see. And the box marked attorney review is marked no. And I didn't have an answer to why that was not checked yes. And I think that's what, we're not trying to answer questions, but that's what the reference was to.
Okay. So let's open it up to public hearing. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed in to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
Is there anyone in council chambers wishing to speak at this time? Approach the dais, name and inside or outside city limits, and you have 5 minutes.
Cindy Eklund, inside city limits. I'm also the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and this topic, this assessment districts, improving and expanding our utilities inside city limits has been greatly discussed over the past, what have I been on, 10 years? So I'm really happy to see this come forward, and I would hope that you all vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the council chambers wishing to speak at this time? Hearing and seeing none, we'll close the public hearing portion. So I wanted to get back, could you clarify again? The city attorney was marked no, so
Yes.
help me understand, but they did review it?
So, Madam Chair, this originally, or Madam Chair.
Yeah, that's
She's
fine.
my chair. Mayor, originally, in the past, these type of resolutions have not been resolutions, they've been non-code ordinances. And so the non-code ordinance was sent and reviewed. We did not send the resolution to the attorney. So the non-code ordinance was reviewed. It's the same wording, it's just, it was applied differently for the resolution versus a non-code ordinance. And it's been done 2 different ways in the past. I mean, it's been either done by a resolution or non-code. I chose to go the non-code ordinance direction because it puts a punch to it. But I sort of would like to see this resolution, if it, were to be passed tonight, that to know that when it gets approved, we would still be bringing forward a non-code ordinance that has been reviewed by the attorney.
Format.
Okay, Councilmember Baclan?
So it's not going to be passed tonight because it's just the first
Right,
public hearing?
right.
But
But-
then on the next one, can it be reviewed by the attorney before it comes back?
Yeah, we can send it to them.
And then just one short
Councilmember
little thing.
Bacon.
There's just a little typo on section
Yep.
4, professional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And that's
just
all.
got that.
Yeah.
So any further questions or comments regarding this resolution? Okay, so we will need a motion to postpone.
I'll move to postpone Resolution 2020-006 until January 27th for its second public hearing.
Is there a second? Second. And we will need a vote on the postponement.
Voting to postpone Resolution 20-006 to January 27th. Lane is not in the room. Baclan?
Yes.
McClure?
Yes.
Butts?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
And Mayor Terry.
Yes.
The postponement is approved.
Okay. Let's take a 5-minute recess. Could the clerk just make sure that Councilmember Lane is reached, just so that we know that something hasn't happened to her? So it's 8:27. If we could just try to reach her and make sure that she's fine. Thank you. So we'll take a 5-minute recess. It's that time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. 8, there's no unfinished business. Number 9, new business ordinances for introduction. Madam Clerk, could you read that into the record, please?
Ordinance 20-001 is amending the land use plan and zoning designation of the west half of Federal Edition Blocks 7, 14, and 17, except Block 7A, Block 17, from single-family residential R1 to two-family residential R2, and two-family residential R2 to urban residential UR.
Thank you, and we're looking for a motion for introduction in a second.
I move for the introduction of ordinance 2020-001.
So, administration?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, pardon me.
I'll second.
Thank you. Administration?
So this is the community development items. I'll have them present this.
So, Madam Mayor and Council, the resolution or ordinance in front of you this evening is in remarks from a current an appeal that had happened during the appeal board. It was recommended to go back to council, or back to planning and zoning for a recommendation. That recommendation was, an application was accepted again through the applicant, and at the applicant's request, it was for office residential. During the meeting, the planning and zoning meeting, there was multiple discussions from citizens as well as the applicants. And then it went into discussion through the planning and zoning commissioners, and that's where the UR came into play. During the meeting, they did request to amend the current resolution by recommending from P&Z to change it from OR to UR. That was voted on and it passed, and that's why there's that confusion of why is it being approved through planning and zoning as one and changed totally. It was through a recommendation, and as you see in the ordinance or the resolution that was passed, it's recommending that you change it to UR. It's not saying that that the applicant wanted it. It was just the recommendation off of the appeal that had been done. I can tell you personally from my point, when that appeal board happened, we were all very confused on how it got back in the hands of planning and zoning instead of a decision being made. So that came into play. I believe it deeply came into play, and I see commissioners trying to make amends of how to make it work, and they thought that the UR would be the best. And it was against the recommendation of the applicant.
Thank you. So just to clarify with Madam Clerk, it's not up for public hearing at this juncture. That will be at the next meeting. So now we're back to questions to administration from the dais. Vice Mayor?
So if we wanted to amend this to go back to OR, do we need to wait until the 27th to do that, or we could make that motion tonight?
You can amend it tonight.
We could.
Vice Mayor?
I'd like to amend then to change this ordinance 2020-001 back from UR to OR. and
Second.
All the places necessary in there. Is that okay?
Let's have discussion on that motion, please. I'll go look to the maker too.
I watched when it went back to P&Z, and I understand how that happened. It was a compromise to get something done, I believe. And I've read an email that, and I have to trust the person who sent it, knowing things about that probably OR is really what they wanted in the first place in terms of what's allowed. So that's why I'm making that recommendation.
Okay, Councilmember Buckland?
I don't think the change to UR, the recommendation was what the original applicant or the citizens who signed support for it. So I do not believe that was not in the interest of the citizens or the people who applied for it, nor was it what was posted for the whole process. So I see that if it went to UR, I feel like that would have been a whole nother posting process, and that was not what I thought was going to happen. So I am still a little. The process was long and arduous, but I don't think this is what the original applicants wanted.
Thank you. Are there comments on this side? Councilmember Butts?
I agree too with this one here also too, that I believe if this was to stay UR, I think that they would end up, we would see this again, because then they would come back and then resubmit for to change back to an OR again.
Okay. Councilmember
Well,
Buckland?
not only that, but wouldn't they have to wait another 90 days or whatever?
To change it to
Yeah.
UR?
Or to OR?
To OR? Because the appeal was a recommendation by the commission, or the council, to re-look at it, we put those numbers out. Like, the attorney was like, we don't count the 90 days because it was a recommendation from the Appeal Adjustment Board. So, no.
Are there any further comments on the motion changing changing the UR recommendation to OR throughout the resolution? Are there any further comments? Okay, well, let's vote on that motion, please.
Voting on that amendment, McClure,
Yes.
Olsenga,
Yes.
Buckhorn,
Yes.
Lutz,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Okay, back on the floor is the ordinance for introduction. Is there any further comments regarding that? Madam Administration?
I would just like to really point out that this process has been really long and drawn out, and the Planning and Zoning Commission did not do anything incorrect. They amended a resolution, which is what you guys just did tonight.
Yep.
But we also, the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as Community Development, have used our comp plan for this rezone, which we are supposed to do for every rezone. So I just really want to point out that though people don't care for the comp plan, it is something that we follow, and the applicant is 100% correct. If you look at the future land use, it would butt up to what the plan is by changing those other areas into office residential.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question to that comment. So I know the answer to this. I'd like to have it on the record. When was the most recent adoption of the comprehensive plan?
It was approved in July of 2020.
Is it 18 or something?
It was 18. It was 18, sorry.
I mean, it's been recent.
July of 2018. 2017. July of 2017, I'm sorry. And Planning and Zoning is working on doing a work session next week on the topic at hand for comp plan review.
So, motion on the floor is for introduction of this ordinance. It will come back to us at the next meeting for public hearing. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Voting on the introduction, McClure,
Yes.
Lutz,
Yes.
Olsenga,
Yes.
Buckhorn,
Yes.
Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That ordinance has been introduced.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-004. Madam Clerk, could you read that title into the minutes, please?
Resolution 20-004 is authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club in the amount of $170,000 and appropriating funds.
I move for the approval of Resolution 2020-004.
Second?
Thank you. To administration.
So I'm going to have Tyler come up, Tyler Florence, our Director for Parks and Rec. And he's going to kind of walk through a little bit of the purpose and reasons and hopefully answers lots of your questions. And thank you, Tyler.
Council, Madam Mayor. So the impetus for this initiative was the recognition that there was a potential duplication of service, and that's something that we look for as part of the programming that we put out. We also had natural attrition in terms of personnel changes coinciding at the same time. Also in concert with sort of reviewing the entire scope of our operations and the effectiveness of our youth programs. So I became aware that there was a similar youth provider, the Boys and Girls Club here in Seward. And we initiated discussions with them to look at their operations and see if there's any potential partnership that could be fruitful for the city. As the discussions progressed, we realized that there was an opportunity. Maggie, Irene, other staff that have worked for Boys and Girls Club and also worked for the city. Rachel, their executive director, have all been extremely forthcoming and just great to work with in terms of exploring these potential ideas. And so we've had numerous ongoing discussions, regular meetings, input from community members, like Mrs. Smith. We held a public forum addressed to address a lot of the concerns and to disseminate information about where we're at in the process. We feel that this agreement really represents the best way forward for the youth of Seward, for the city, and for us as a department going forward. If you guys have any questions.
I have a question. So Teen Rec Room, that older program that I believe is held pretty late into the evenings and on the weekends, will Boys and Girls Club staff that, or will that be city staff?
Boys and Girls Club is staff.
Okay. And I guess the other question that I have is, so I'll back up because I've had a lot of parents contact me with a lot of concerns. This really is just kind of a bare bones, pretty cut and dry, and there's no like real proposal back from Boys and Girls Club. And I've had kids in both programs, so maybe you could talk about what you're providing now, and if there'll be any differences or any drop of services to when Boys and Girls Club starts providing the services.
So broadly speaking, there will be no drop-in services, and really there will only be enhanced services, especially over time, and especially as we get the programming dialed in. So one of our earliest points of discussion was to make sure that this transition would be as seamless as possible both for the youth and for the families and the parents involved. So that's why we stipulated very specifically in there, the ongoing maintenance of the after-school programs, summer day camp programs, periodic and seasonal recurring programming. We've discussed specific program activities in there as well. That's why we also we discussed the Teen Youth Council and the future of that. Did that answer?
That does answer my question. And I just want to check with council, and I'm willing to suspend the rules. I think it's appropriate to, since that representative from Boys and Girls Club is here. Is there any objections to that? No, okay. Councilmember Buckwan, did you have a question?
I too have heard some concerns about the, just the kind of vagueness of everything. I also wanted to know what the city's plans were in what will happen to our employees that are there. How will this affect the TYC and the TRR budget? A few questions, and I don't know if council would entertain a motion to postpone this so that we could get more information. I also had questions about the contribution that the city makes already to the Boys and Girls Club of $25,000. So it would bring the total contribution to $195,000. Or, yeah, okay.
Yes,
I was just, so that wouldn't go away, it would just be in addition to. And then I do understand that this would be like a 1 year long kind of thing, but I just feel like there could be a little more information that we could get and that the public could get before we had a lot more support. I don't disagree with this by any means. I just think a lot of people want a little more clarification on the services that will transfer through or not transfer through. What happens if we are losing employees? What is the cost to the city if we're taking out positions or if we're moving positions around? So just a little more specifics on the city side on what the plan is on the transition, and then more specifics on the services that are provided, especially I've heard some concerns because and we as the city too, our attendance has been falling for the TRR, or kind of just maintaining that attendance. Maybe a plan for what does the Boys and Girls Club plan to do to make it better, or to increase usage, as well as Christiana had mentioned today about what about the rental of the facility, who would manage that, who stays in, who stays as kind of like Tyler would, be the, because a lot of the middle school will use it for dances, or for our other clubs use it for different gatherings. So maybe more of a specific outline of what is going to happen in the transition. Like I said, I don't disagree with this at all. Just a little more information would be helpful.
Would you like those answers now?
Well, I think that we could possibly get all of our answers together and then through the city manager provide you with that so that we can have one clear a little bit better of a presentation at one time. I don't want to slow it down by any means. I think there's just a little more time if we can get it in by the next meeting. If the council could come together with the questions and then like I said, through the city manager, get that together and the concerns from the citizens. That way, all that information could be provided at the next meeting, and then we could make a more informed decision.
So can I ask 2 questions? First, I want to ask Madam Clerk, do we have 1 or 2 presentations already scheduled for that second meeting in January? Is there already 2?
There are 2. You told me because one of them's for me, so.
Oh, and then.
I know there's 2.
Okay. So, and then the second question would be, with your timeline, I know you were looking at aggressive February 1st. Is there anything hinging on that? Like if we put the brakes on it for 2 weeks, what would be the ramifications?
Yeah, I'd say February 1st. I don't even know if I would call it aggressive. I feel like it's the exact right timeline. And the reason we're aiming for that is, and this relates to some of the personal questions you were alluding to, Councilmember Baclan. So we currently are short one of our main coordinators, the TYC coordinator. So we're in a holding pattern right now, and our staff, Irene and Tracy and a lot of our other staff have really pitched in, have really covered down, made a valiant effort, and really honestly taken on a lot more job, fulfilling roles and duties that really is outside of their typical workload. And thank you to them for that. So we're only able to offer limited services right now as it is. I have another full-time coordinator who has communicated that they are on the way out in the not too distant future. Really, we're waiting on, honestly, this is what we were trying to coincide the timing. So all these sort of dates sort of lined up, start of the new fiscal cycle, the new year, these personnel, natural attrition of personnel. So no personnel would be, no one would lose, no one's losing their job. The financial aspects have all been taken into account. So there will be cost savings, generally speaking, across the board. There are other portions of those funds. I would, and this is sort of a ongoing conversation with Scott. I would like to reallocate to other areas of our programming that I think have not been fully fleshed out yet. But to your point, though, that we're happy to communicate and respond to any questions you may have.
Vice Mayor?
Usually people complain that government moves too slowly, but I think this came as a big shock to a lot of us and a lot of the public when they read this. Like, where did this come from? And it sounded, originally that we're paying in $170,000 in addition to everything. I've gotten a lot of calls. Maybe if people are watching tonight, they're hearing it better now, but I agree with Councilmember Baclan that I'd like to see a little more information, and just for the good of the order,
Sure.
Councilmember Osenga?
Just a quick question on a comment you made. You did make comment this is a cost-saving measure, or this would save money. So how do you see this saving money?
It's coming out of, so essentially we'd be allocating these funds out of our TYC and record budget, which the way I think of it is it's a consolidated youth programs budget. That's the way I think about it. And organizationally, I think that makes the most sense. Easily, we'll save $200,000 just right off the top, somewhere in that neighborhood, depending on how we want to reallocate other resources. Really, without batting an eye, we'll be saving $100,000 right
a year.
A year.
A year. You're talking about.
Correct. Now, we want to conserve a certain amount of those resources. Ms. Smith made a great point in terms of future cost inflation. Also, that it's a new proposal, and especially when it's a new joint venture like this, wanting to really dial in that program, trying to be conservative and balanced, but also allowing adequate resources for the future in case the proposal needs to be adjusted as well. So, in terms of inflation, most other services contracts don't have any sort of inflation mechanism tracking or inflation tracking mechanism incorporated as part of that contract services. But and allow me to explain a little bit about the bare bones nature of the agreements. So to me, the most important part of the agreement is the management portion, that's why it's mirrored exactly on the Parks and Rec side and the Boys and Girls Club side, that we will work together on program implementation, evaluation, and oversight. You can put as much as you want into these agreements. In my experience, though, it's about the management teams coming together, working to resolve issues, and I pride myself on doing that. And what I've seen from the Boys and Girls Club is that they have that same mentality, and that's why I think it's going to be a productive partnership. But that is on me that I could have probably communicated this better to the public and disseminated it in a more proactive fashion.
Tyler, can you talk about the FTE implications as far as the staffing we currently have versus what being seasonal and the vacancies and how that translates to kind of the timing?
Correct. So we have two, I believe I alluded to it a little bit earlier. We have two full-time positions essentially that are in charge of those programs. So for the rec room and for TYC. So TYC is that full-time position is vacant right now. The rec room position will be vacant in the not too distant future. The seasonal programming, or the seasonal employees, so we have some seasonal workers like Irene is a seasonal employee with us right now, and the I guess for lack of a better word, the harmony of that, if we merge, is that essentially she will be able then to switch seamlessly right back over to the Boys and Girls Club, because she had, worked for Boys and Girls Club. So, so again, no one would be out of a job, and also trust me, we have plenty of other areas, both on the programming and just parks and campground side, where we always need personnel. So if anyone else that needs to be shifted around hours-wise, they're not going to be hurting for hours.
So, question? So, Boys and Girls Club has enough employees to take up the slack of the employees we're not using?
If we could absorb some of their current employees, yes, that's the hope.
Okay, so a transfer over from the city to...
Right. And that's why we put in the stipulation of having two full-time minimum employees year-round, so that it would at least match in terms of no drop-off in quality in terms of year-round programming.
Okay. Councilmember Buckline?
That's great. I think a lot of questions were answered. However, a lot of my questions still reside on the city side. You mentioned reallocation of funds, as well as what if this program goes really well and you need more money later to hire somebody else because the program's doing so well, and maybe there's some kind of contingency that's held in there, as well as the cost savings. So I'd like to see the numbers of that reflected somehow. As in our work session today, we're going to have to find some money somewhere. So the reallocations of funds is one thing that I'm interested in, how much funds, as well as maybe a contingency, like you said, if something else happens, or the teen council or needs more attention or support. That's pretty much where I think most of my questions are. I do agree that it would be a lot of cost savings if you were to take on some employees. I just still stick by maybe a little more time on some of the budgeting parts of it, the personnel parts of it. If we are losing positions or people are leaving or just kind of transitioning, is that any benefits are affected or anything else that could be affected by it as well?
So one question I have again is if this gets postponed, there's not a motion on the floor, but if someone has a motion and that gets seconded and we vote to postpone to the next meeting, that's gonna change your timeline. What does that look like for the programs?
It will, be a slight thorn. Just understand that, everything's kind of in a holding pattern until we get approval from our board as well as you know. And so it's hard to move forward with any programming planning and, any recruitment for staff without having that solidified. So it is a little nerve-wracking. I totally think you're within your right. That's a lot of money. The fact that this is a good chunk of money is not lost on us at all. And it's a big deal. And we want to make sure you guys are informed. So if it needs to wait, I totally understand and we'll provide all the answers that you need. But it does complicate things slightly just based on, for example, we have a schools out day camp coming up for a week and for spring break, and so pushing the deadline back would kind of be a little hairy. It might put it back on you if we have to push beyond that date.
Right.
Just some of that, the logistics get a little more difficult the more we push back, but this is not something that should be rushed into either. So.
And again, we have staff that are essentially having to cover town, really to actively, cover this area. So, and in regards to the earlier budget question, so the combined budget of the rec room and the TYC is approximately $350,000 annually. So we're talking about $170,000 for the agreement. I would recommend at least a 20% reserve fund for potential future allocations. Also baked into that figure, of course, is the ongoing maintenance for utilities, maintenance repair for the facilities themselves, which isn't really a huge cost. So those are sort of general figures.
Please also bear in mind that we are nonprofit and we do have, we have access, that affords us access to finding funding in other areas, and I am definitely not one that likes to put all my eggs in one basket, and we will continue to aggressively look for other funding sources so that we're not relying entirely on MC's contribution.
And one of the biggest benefits of this partnership too is that because of their status is that they have access to funding that we just wouldn't have access to otherwise. So that's why we can realize some of these cost savings. Yes.
One thing specific within the memorandum of agreement that hasn't been signed by either party right now is changing that Seward youth ages 5 to 18.
Yeah, I think we both support that.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So let's see if there's a motion to put on the floor other than what's before us with the resolution. Okay. Is there any further discussion?
You guys are good.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of concerns about it, and a lot of what you said makes sense too. I don't want to delay it, but I would like to see the numbers come back, which is the only thing that I think I'm concerned about at this point.
Okay.
So if we can if I can make a motion to direct the city manager to bring us back the reallocations that are planned for the TYC and the TRR, as well as the total numbers in cost savings and jobs that may be or may not be affected by the transfer, I think would satisfy my question.
Okay, so that's a motion.
I will second that.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Within that, I think I'd like to see, and I think that motion covers it, but to include like custodial services, like who's doing what in there. I think that's covered in your motion, so.
Okay.
Can we vote on that motion, please?
Putting on that motion, Butts,
Yes.
Buckland,
Yes.
Leclerc,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
and Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That motion is approved.
I just have another comment. I like that this is just for a year, And I think that a lot of trust is being placed in both of you, and I don't think it's being misplaced in both of you. I think that you two are the two to do it. And you recognize how valuable our Seward youth are and those parents are, and we just really need to make this happen. We've both heard a lot of concerns about childcare in this town, and we have a lot of concerns regarding youth and their welfare. So I think that this is a good move if it increases the capacity to serve. But I think that having that year and reevaluating it in a year with the next contract would be helpful. So while I can't direct Boys and Girls Club, it would be great to have something in writing come back to us on your plans, which we can't direct you, but that's just something I'd like to see.
Programming plan.
Yeah, programming plans and, yes.
And if you could just include the families in that, and their, and somehow maybe get them, I know you
It's
have.
tough,
Yeah.
without the approval, it's tough to
Yeah.
reach out and approve, because everything's kind of in a holding pattern, we don't know that. But yes, absolutely, they need to be included in all of our decisions.
Thank you both. I think.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions or discussion, I'll look to the clerk to vote on resolution 2020-004.
And council is back on the rules. Voting on the approval of resolution 20-004. Osenga?
Yes.
Leclerc?
Yes.
Butts?
Yes.
Buckbon?
Yes.
And Mayor Terry?
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
So next on the agenda, let me know if I'm missing something, but I believe next on the agenda is schedule a work session to review, am I okay? Schedule a work session to review and discuss the capital improvement plan priorities and ongoing projects and goals list on February 12th at 6 p.m. And I'll turn it over to administration.
So at this point, we are proposing to schedule the CIP workshop for the 10th, I believe it's the 10th of
12th,
February?
February
12th. I'm told that Tammy will start on the 27th rather than in February like she had originally planned, finance director. So I want to confirm that. But I did ask the clerk's office if they had a contact with Foraker, and Brenda shared with me the information on that. I don't know how that, having Tammy coming and her familiarity with these processes, I'm not super sure I want to go down the Foraker road due to the cost. If we were a nonprofit, I would definitely jump all over that because it's usually free. So at this time, I'm just trying to get this, and I'm assuming that you just at this point want to look at the capital improvement for the general fund. I was presuming you didn't want to get into all the enterprise funds, the harbor. So keeping it focused to that at this point. There are some additional outcomes from that, such as the Jesse Lee project, home facility project. That'll probably create an additional work session for us. But I feel like, it's going to be tight and short and to the point, but I feel like we have the capacity to get that prepared by the 12th. So if you're okay with that, I know we have a lot of stuff coming up in work sessions and.
Are you talking the 10th or the 12th?
I
The
believe.
10th is a Monday.
In the packet, it says 12th,
I
so as
know.
long as we clarify the date.
Yeah, my calendar says the 10th, so I'm not sure.
Well, we need to.
I thought it was gonna be on a Monday.
The 10th is a Monday. We have a meeting.
Do you have a preference? I mean, the 12th is a Wednesday.
12th is on Wednesday. Does council have a preference, Councilmember?
I would rather keep it on the Monday, just,
Okay.
it's one less night out for,
Okay. Is there a time on that Monday? It says 6.
We have a meeting that day?
It's the second.
Is that gonna be enough time? I mean, this is a pretty serious conversation. Do
Yeah.
we wanna say starting at 5:30? 5 was a little early, I think. Do we wanna
Well,
say
if we do it at
5:30?
5, then we
I
can
think
have
that's
a
why you
public-
picked an off meeting.
Yeah, I
than
think-
Actually,
Oh.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, a whole Saturday would be.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Let's just give it 3 days now. Yeah, I mean, it depends. I think if we look at a very big picture and make some decisions on that, it will be rapid, but I don't know that that's gonna be easy to do.
Yeah. Councilmember Buckland?
What is the cost of a facilitator?
So with the proposal that we've gotten, it's kind of like having an attorney come in. We have travel, we have lodging, and
My suggestion, there's 2 local facilitators that I've been to meetings, very well done. David Paperman, he facilitated the climate action plan. And then also Jen Leahy facilitated a meeting that I was just at. So, looking at those 2 as local options, I think would be, and I'm sure that they would be less expensive. And then I'd also like to see, instead of us sitting here with a list, it would be great to have things around the room and posted. And have some visuals. And I don't know if we're looking at council chambers. I know, let's go back to the date. I agree with you that Mondays, long Mondays are easier, but I'm just nervous about the timing.
Yeah, that's okay. It's all right.
What do folks look like with Wednesday? I have something standing on Wednesday, but I'm happy to attend if we schedule this for the 12th. Okay, so Wednesday, February 12th, starting at 6, looks like what we're coming to. And then the next question would be location. So all work sessions in the council rules and procedures are held in this room unless we make another determination. Do we want to look at the library community room?
might be easier.
To have a larger venue? Are there any objections? Okay. And then looking at local facilitators,
Is it acceptable to come back here if we can't get the library?
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
So part of it that's difficult for me too is having the new finance director who's
Yeah.
very capable of facilitating this.
Yeah.
Kind of showing up within 2 weeks having everything and just do it. Hey, by the way, so that's my concern with this short time frame. But I think
Yeah. Well, the good news is with a facilitator, they can kind of lead and the finance director can maybe step back and then think of the support system things. The good thing about being new is you don't know what you don't know, so she can concentrate on this right off the bat. Are there any other logistics that as a council we want to take a look at?
I'd just like to make another suggestion, because I've done a lot of these type of meetings, and the larger space is better because you can do the interaction. So if we can't get the community room, maybe we look at the Ray Building, because there's that one section that you can put things up on the wall, people can really, yeah. So I'd just like to put that as one of the options too, just.
So let's look at that, and I know there might be a cost to that, but it might be worth it for something like this if the library isn't available. Okay, thank you. Any other items for the city manager regarding this?
Do we agree on a facilitator, or we're gonna look into
Well,
another one?
I don't know if, I just threw 2 names out there, so maybe if there's local facilitators that we could talk to. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
if they're available.
Great, I think we've covered that. Next item on the agenda is appoint someone to the Historic Preservation Commission with a term to expire May 2021. We have 2 applicants. We have a lay down for Mr. Reed Lane, and then we also have Marianne Benoit, and you have her application in the packet. So, Madam Clerk, if you could go through the process, please.
Before you, council, you all have little ballots, and they have the 2 names of the candidates. If you would just vote for one and pass the ballots over, and I'll read them to aloud.
Are we supposed to put our initials
Yeah,
on it?
do we sign them?
Yes, please.
And this is voting on to appoint Historic Preservation Commission member.
Okay, so reading the ballot number 1, we have 1 vote for Marianne Benoit, 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 and 1 vote for Mary Ann Benoit. So, thank you, Mary Ann.
So now, do you need a formal motion and a vote, or how did you want to proceed?
You can, if you would like to formalize it with a motion to
Okay.
appoint.
Okay, let's, Vice Mayor?
I'll move to appoint Mary Ann Benoit to the Historical Preservation Commission with a term to expire May 2021.
Second?
Okay, let's call for a vote, please.
Voting on that motion, Osenga.
Yes.
Buckline.
Yes.
Lutz.
Yes.
Lane. McClure.
Yes.
And Mayor Terry.
Yes.
That motion is approved.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is update and discussion on the Seward Airport. Now, as all of you know, I have required or really wanted to stick to the rules of procedures when it comes to having council's items on the agenda requiring agenda statement. The reason why I did not do so is because we just had a meeting on Friday last, where I didn't do an agenda statement because I would have missed, the packet was already in place. So I thought this was an important enough item to make sure that the public notice was on there to update and discussion on the Seward Airport. What I have for laydowns in front of you is, council has appointed a special ad hoc committee, and you'll see the first page is the bullet point with their recommendations. Page 2 is the FAA invitation to the meeting that the city manager, harbor master, and I attended on, it was 1/9, so whatever day of the week 1/9 was last Thursday, thank you. And then also an email was further received today from FAA with their notes on the meeting. So you have my notes from the meeting. And then I'm going to go through that. I'm going to look to administration, and then I'm also going to suspend the rules to have the ad hoc chair. But first I wanted to read some of my notes. We had FAA and DOT and the city at that meeting. We weren't quite sure who was going to attend the meeting, and then also in attendance were Murkowski and Stevens staffers. And we weren't quite sure what the meeting was going to entail. But when we got there, FAA clarified that it was a forum for DOT to say where they were at with the process and moving forward with the Seward Airport, the City of Seward to make comments, and then FAA to make their comments. Some of the key points from that meeting, environmental assessment is going to be completed in 2 weeks. And that approves moving forward with 2.2. And for those of you, just to clarify, so 2.2 is not refurbing the long runway. It's abandoning the short runway as we know it and having the new 3,300-foot runway with a little different orientation, a brand new runway, will be the runway at the Seward Airport. So this is new information that we finally had clarified. Option 2.2, that project, once the EA is completed, will go forward with a bid with construction starting in 2021. And FAA and DOT did seem to confirm that the funding was going to happen. So while that, either the funding's allocated or once that EA is approved, we will have that, they will have that funding. DOT can and plans to move forward with 2.2 even above city objections. At this point, the city is just a stakeholder because we do not own the airport. The state said that current airport no longer provides for the health and welfare goals of their mission. They want to have a functioning runway to accept fixed-wing medevac airplanes in place prior to further disintegration of the long runway. DOT will not walk away from the buffer of the long runway. That's one thing that the community's fought for, and they do see the value in keeping in place to protect the airport infrastructure. DOT didn't have an answer for why comments haven't been placed on the website since the last few meetings. And FAA said at the time that they hear our concerns, but looking at the practicalities, and she used that word a number of times, of the situation, they don't see another outcome. And I will say that Vice Mayor McClure was also at the meeting on teleconference.
2 hours.
2 hours. So, and then the last point that I wanted to make is, and this is true or not true, I don't know, but they maintain that a delay at this point to wait for all the requirements to be removed to refurbish the long runway would then be 5 to 10 years with no funding guaranteed. And so I know Chair of the Ad Hoc Committee and I probably disagree a little bit because I didn't think that the administration of Murkowski and Stevens seemed that supportive, going against FAA or DOT on those, some of those things. And I think my opinion is that council needs as a body to make a determination on how to proceed. I think we need to get a final determination from the ad hoc committee and then vote to proceed with either their recommendation, another course of action, or do nothing and let the process continue. And I think that the chair of the ad hoc committee has some ideas of moving forward that could include a work session or having that ad hoc committee meet rapidly. I think rapidly, if we're going to do anything, is the key. And then just from that email today, which is a laydown, we talked about our preference for alternative 1.1. We talked about that we're moving forward to exploring other federal funding options, and we're want to move forward with the river flooding regardless. And then FAE's comments and then DOT's comments match. And I just, in my report, I just want to say that I was very careful to clarify that I didn't represent council. The only thing I could represent at the time was what we voted on for our state and federal priorities, and then also that we did form the ad hoc committee. So there was some strength in that. So I'll turn to administration. Did you have any further comments?
No, I didn't have any further comments.
I just wanted to add, I heard you say Stevens, I think we meant
Oh,
Sullivan.
Sullivan, pardon me, Sullivan, excuse me.
I don't know, I got notification today that DOT did take action, and that might be why we see this from Venus, from the FAA, that they did step forward with 2.2. However, the director is on vacation for some prolonged period after today, so I couldn't get in touch with him.
So did that EA get approved? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm told that the state has stepped forward with, after meeting with us, they were kind of holding off till they met with the city, and that they are leaning towards proceeding with the 2.2 and the EA to be completed. I think, from my observations from the meeting, the federal legislators are not willing to tell the state how to operate, and don't really have funding mechanisms to help us with the river. I personally may be misspoken, but I don't know that the residents of Seward want to pay for an airport project. I could be wrong with that, but so that I think all those indicators led to this is the viable, supported, feasible option at this point. Outside of that, I don't know. That's what I took away from that. I don't know if I have the same opinions as everyone in the room.
So through the mayor, my recollection of the meeting was that they were going to move ahead with EA, but I didn't know about the rest of it. But they were going to move ahead within 2 weeks. I believe that's what they said. They're going to move forward.
That's what I heard.
That's what you heard. That's what I got out of it. So I don't know what, if they're going to do the rest of it. I don't know, but I know that the EA is moving forward.
So at this time, I'd like to suspend the rules because I think that I, for one, would like to hear from the chair of that ad hoc committee, if he would like to make some comments. Is there any objections to suspending the rules? Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, Council, we participated in a meeting with 21 people. Felt like I got hit by a steamroller. We had asked for notification on what the meeting was about ahead of time to prepare. We went into the meeting essentially wide-eyed with no serious preparation for what came about. I take a little bit different view on what we saw there than the manager. Maybe I'd had some interaction with the legislative people. Since then, I have had more traded emails thanking them for their participation as well. And I think you've seen some of those responses thanking them for their participation. And they have said, you know, well, nice try. But Scott Lethard with Senator Sullivan's office has come back and said, you know, I'm ready to go. Let me know what to do. And this is the problem, is what do we ask them to do? We are at the point now, and I did talk to Christy Warden, who's the director of the FAA this morning. She did confirm that the 2 weeks is a reasonable estimate for the amount of time FAA would take to complete the EA and get it to the state. She can't speak for the state. The manager just gave us some information that I hadn't had. The state may decide that this, I'm likening it to a train running downhill with no brakes. They may decide to do that, push forward more or less in spite of the city of Seward. I think there are some options, and I worked to investigate that today. When I talked to Christy Warden with the FAA, I got a list of organizations in the state, of the 290 or so airports in the state. There's a portion of them that are not DOT owned. They all belong to an organization called NPIAS. It's an acronym for something, but it's airports. And they follow under the rules of the FAA. One of those is the city of Soldotna. I spent time today talking to 3 different people in the administration of Soldotna, including their maintenance, their accounting, and their city engineer, who's their administrator. They have a similar airport that they work directly with FAA for funding. They have revenues and expenses. Their picture to me is a doable picture. Whether the city of Seward has the will to move that way, I think it's a question that we need to get the temperature of the city. Their effort was not, it cost them money in the beginning, but it's come back to where it's now functioning and paying money back. Ultimately, what the city wants out of this airport is what would determine, you know, what you want to put into it. We are not going to have the airport that we've had with DOT running it, period. The only way to get 1.1 at this point is to enjoin the state from further action until, if the city wants to do this, to move forward with an ownership or a transfer of ownership, if you will, which could be done. And from the meeting, Mayor Terry had interaction with Wolfgang with the state. This is not the first time that this has come up. The state is in a divestiture mode. They would love to get rid of airports. And whether the city again wants to do it, and if it's in their best interests, that would have to be for the community to decide and the council to decide. I have my opinion, but I'm just one. And I don't even live in the city. I have interests here, I have economic interests here, and I would be paying into any improvement of the city. So I do speak in that regard, but that's not enough. So I think you have a tough decision on how to move forward. But I can tell you my own personal experience, I've run into this stuff in the past, this kind of thing, and I gear down and fight. And I'd say my success rate's about 95%. It's not 100%. But if you want something, you might have to fight for it. So how do we do that if we want to do it? I think there are some mechanisms. We'll call it, Carol Griswold and I are both on the committee. We can get most of the committee together quickly. We can come up with an action plan to the city, to the council. But I don't think there's any way to get DOT to budge without, number one, stopping them, and then coming up with a plan. And that plan needs to be thought out well, because to get qualified with this NPIAS, the FAA, you have to have all the things that you would expect. In business, we call it a business plan, but in government, it's something different. You have to demonstrate financial responsibility. You have to show an administrative staff how you administrate this. You'd have to designate someone. In Soldotna, it's the city engineer. He splits his time. The Public Works would have to show how they would maintain the airport. those things could all be done, and then the city would qualify as the owner and ask the FAA for funding. Now, whether it would put this project back to square one, probably, because the EA has been developed around 2.2. Whether it would take 5 to 10 years, I think that's a smokescreen. I think another statement that the FAA, and they were very careful in this wording, and they even put it in the email, the wind coverage may be disqualifying. I've talked to 2 local pilots, Dennis Perry and Danny Hamilton. They both think that that's not true. They both think that 1331, which is the long runway, has superior wind coverage. So in that meeting the other day, the FAA people were very careful to say, well, it may be disqualifying, so let's not consider it. I don't know what else to add. I mean, I'm ready to fight as far as anybody wants to take it, but it's not just me. So at this point, I think we do need to get the committee together, put together some recommendations to the council, and let the council carry it to the community. I think we are now being broadcast in a different way. Maybe there'll be some more feedback. You know, it's clear in my mind that this is a potential economic engine for the city of Seward. When we talk about the tourist trade of one more day, you know, this is the kind of thing that would make that one more day. Having the opportunity to get on a plane and fly to Homer, you know, fly to Anchorage and back, do a lot of things that aren't available today. I'm ready for any questions that you that I might be able to help with.
Are there questions to, and we'll have you stay, Bruce, thank you. Are there questions to administration or the ad hoc chair? Vice Mayor?
Just one, if my recollection was correct, there's always been the talk of extending that runway further, the 2.2, and the EA, they told us, only covers what it is. The extension is what certain citizens are very concerned about environmentally, and you had stated, I believe at that meeting, someone did, that could be a big problem because we have people. So could you speak to that just briefly for the people listening that might be concerned about that?
The 2.2 is a new configuration which is between the short runway, I think 1434 and 1331. It would aim towards a wetland now, and it probably would wind up with a serious negotiation with the Lear property. And Mr. Lear has already indicated, he's on our committee, but he's indicated to us that he does not want to sell. So the state's ready to take that fight on and build their 2.2. To go beyond 2.2, which would essentially end at almost tideland, there would have to be a build out across that tideland and seagrass and whatever. I believe that there'll be a strong opposition to that. How successful that opposition is, I can't guess. That same opposition was very difficult for Sun Eel or whoever took over the coal thing later. It was very difficult for them to fight. So I believe that same strength is there, which would not make extending 3,300 feet to 4,000 feet a really feasible outcome, have a feasible outcome. I think it'd be very, very difficult.
Okay, one more thing on that, Madam Mayor. That they also said that 700 feet was $10 million?
Well, they can throw numbers around. I mean, you know, and I think that's what they're doing. And, you know, we went into that discussion, I should say, with somewhat of an administrative view and how are we going to administrate a solution. And what they came at us with was technical rebuttal.
New technical. A lot of new technical.
And new, yeah, exactly. Now, again, this is up to the community to decide. It irks me. If an owner did this to me in negotiation, I'd be ready to fight him. The problem is, you know, sometimes the owner is the guy that you have to, he's the only place to get the work, so I don't know. I don't believe their numbers. I don't believe the $20 million that's available is not enough to do everything that we're talking about doing. It would be money to deal with the Corps, to pay the Corps of Engineers. It would be money for transfer of property in the Resurrection River Basin, which would have to happen because of the floodplain issues. Reconstructing the runway itself. I talked to Councilmember Butts about our gravel resource. We've got a tremendous gravel resource. This isn't the interior where it's all sand and you have to import gravel in 5-gallon buckets, which I've seen happen. You know, we've got gravel right next to the runway. And with a little processing and a little bit of creative thinking, it's a very doable thing. So their numbers have never been proven to me, and I'm not a dirt guy, I'm a metal guy, but I'm a construction guy. And I just don't see that money is not adequate to do what we were asking to do. It's their will that it's not there. They don't want to do it.
Great, thank you. I think at this point, at the meeting, I felt like we were saying the same things over and over, and I feel like that's where we are tonight. So I need to hear from council how we want to move forward.
Mayor Terry, if
yes.
I might, just one more thing I'd just like to put on the table. You have an attorney. I talked to my own personal attorney today about this, to just understand the process. There is a history with some people who have challenged agencies in the past. I don't want to revisit the issue particularly, but the precedent is there. It should not be off the table.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back on the rules at this point, and then we'll look to the dais for comments. Going off of that, my first comment would be, thank you for bringing up that last point, but I was going to mention, I mean, I think we should consult with our attorney, just asking some questions about where our rights are as a city and where we stand. I don't think we're ready to start a lawsuit yet, but that's an expenditure with our attorney. I don't know how council feels about that, or if there's a further suggestion on how to move forward. Vice Mayor?
It wouldn't hurt to ask the question of the attorney, just to see, would it be realistic to, you know, just ask. Wouldn't be that much of an expense. But also, I think that the ad hoc committee should meet right ASAP and bring us a definitive, this is what we want from that committee, so we could then make a statement, vote, at a meeting.
Councilmember Osenga?
I guess, it sounds to me like, from what I've heard tonight, it sounds like that Alaska DOT, they're already looking to move on this, and they're already starting. I'm trying to process in my head the reality of us trying to come up with a plan, include the community, vote on it, or whatever, and then present it and say, hey, we're doing this, and then come up with a battle that's kind of realistic at this point in time. I'm not sure how short this timeline is, but I kind of thought it was pretty short. It sounds to me like it's an awful lot to cram into, and I might be wrong. I could be wrong. I have concerns.
Okay. I'll look to Councilmember Butts. Did you have any comments?
I would agree here too that this is something that with the ad hoc committee, they've got some great bunch of bullet points in here and all the things that they talked about here too. But I would really like to see a consensus of what they feel like. We brought them together because they're our experts of what their consensus is of what, you know, what we feel we should do, and then bring that back to us, and then we should start moving forward with that.
Okay. Councilmember Buckland? Yes. So, looking to the clerk, if we could have on our next agenda final recommendations from the ad hoc committee on recommended moving forward. I mean, I think we need as a body something to look at and something to vote on. So the other thing is, since it looks like we had some head nodding to consult the attorney, my other question to her would be, that could potentially require an executive session so that we can hear, that would be potentially pending litigation, to make sure with her if we need to have an executive session on the next council meeting to discuss pending litigation and have all that, in that forum. Vice Mayor?
And she will be here at the next meeting.
And she'll be here at the
so
next meeting.
that coincides.
And so the other thing is, to the clerk, are those ad hoc committee meetings, they are not publicly noticed, is that correct?
No, they're not publicly noticed, they're not recorded, there may be minutes that are taken at them, but they're really not, they don't fall under the same requirements.
So would there be any way, do you think that would restrict them meeting in a timely manner if when they told you when their meeting was, you set that out to your clerk's list, even though it's not a formal public meeting notice, just to get more community involvement? What would be your opinion on that?
I would definitely be able to do that if the committee was, if that was the wishes of council and the committee wanted to have.
What does council think about that?
I think that's a good idea. If the committee's,
Anything
up.
process.
Yeah, sure. We could at least get some, and maybe on our new Facebook page also. Okay. Is there any other comments or directions at this time? Madam Clerk, is everything memorialized? Do we need to vote on anything at this time?
No, I think we've got good direction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Councilmember Butts. Direct the city manager to create a policy for Seward Police to respond outside city limits. And there's an agenda statement on page 88, but Councilmember Butts, I'll let you speak to this.
So after a little bit of gathering information through the city manager, I learned that we don't have a written policy for officers to respond outside of the city limits. So as far as I'm concerned and what I see is that not having something written is not a policy. There has to be something that guides either the chief of police or guides the officers or something like this or two. We need to have something set up that not having something set up just really leaves the city open for litigation. That's the way I feel.
Okay. Councilmember Osenga?
So what you're talking about is a policy for the city?
Policy or guidelines,
Or
guidelines.
And or guidelines. But do we have an agreement to work with? Is there an agreement between the police and the state troopers to?
So I would turn over to Tom, who is very intimately knowledgeable about how police officers in this state jurisdictions work, and have him present that information.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thanks, sir.
Councilman Butts to the mayor, and if you don't mind, I want to just give a little brief history of how all this all came
Yes.
about. Before I got here, we were all on the same frequency. We dispatched the troopers out to their calls and did everything else like that. And the problem was, everybody was just doing whatever they wanted to do. We were going out there whether we were asked or not, and they were coming into town whether we were asked them or not. And that, when I got here, I saw a mess here. I didn't think that was correct. And then when we changed over to ALMR, now we don't even dispatch the troopers anymore. We did it out of Slough, but it was still kind of going on, so I put a stop to that. So we're gonna have a policy on what we're going to do. And here's the first part of that policy was this: we will not respond unless you call us and ask for our assistance. At which time I had no problem with that, and I acknowledge that procedure policy, whatever you want to call it, because I will never leave a state trooper out there by himself to get hurt. That's the best way to put that. And they've come in and helped us too, whenever we've asked them to come in and help us too. Well, then, as that proceeded, it got to the point where we were doing that, but the troopers would call us to come in and do something for them, so we would go there, get to the scene, and they never showed up. Now we're doing this case. Once we're there and we've touched it, it's ours. So now we're investigating a case out on the outside of our area, doing all the work for that. and they're not paying for that service. And the liability issues there. That's now became our issue. So it all comes back to us if something goes wrong. So I changed that to where we will go and help you anytime you ask us to help you, but we will stage and wait for you to get there. And then, go by us and we'll go in together. That's for officer safety. It gives them a backup. But we don't want to be sitting outside the city, and this happened a couple of times. We're investigating a case, we had one officer working that day, and he's outside the city, out with no service now for the city while he's investigating this case that's out there. So, with that, I want to read you something that Lieutenant Zweifel, he sent me an email today because he believes he might have been a little misunderstood here, if something happened last week. So understand from our telephone conversation today that there may have been a misunderstanding or comments I made at town hall meeting with Senator McChichy last week. I would like to clarify those comments if they were misunderstood or I misspoke. During the town hall, I commented the city policy regarding the city police officers responding outside the area to assist the Alaska State Troopers, AST. My understanding of the current policy is that the Seward police officers will respond to assist AST at our request. The city officers will stage a short distance away from the crime scene, and once AST either passes or gets up to the officer, and that's not really going to happen, we're going to brief each other before we go in anyways. On arrival at the scene, the Seward officer will respond to the scene to assist AST. This is usually utilized by AST for active people crimes, no property crimes. We will not respond to any property crimes, help with that. Just people crimes. There were a couple of questions why this was the policy, and I referred them to contact the city for their answers, and that I could not make or force the city to respond prior to AST. I further explained during this town hall that the other cities in the Kenai Peninsula respond to our request differently. Our other police departments in the Kenai Peninsula respond to a crime scene at our request, stop any violent accident happening, or hold the scene until AST arrives. Now, there's an advantage there because that's over there where they got lots of officers. They sometimes got 200 or 300 shifts, so you can pull a guy, send it to their crime, their scene, and they can hold the scene, do something with the scene over there, and of course, if it's a people crime and there's a violent act taking place, then they'll do that. So, but that can only happen over there because we only have 10 guys and eventually 11 when we hire. At any one time, we may have 2 guys working. Most of the time, it's not that case. We do the best we can to make coverage for 7/24. But if we take anything goes outside the city, then we're not here to take care of the city. We're going to be there. So if the domestic violence thing come up, and we're committed. If we touch that thing, and we can't just King's X, we got to go to town and we'll be back later. That's not going to work. So that's why we just do people crimes, and only if they ask us, and they have to respond. I mean, there have been several times where I'm sure Corporal Messer will remember some of those times where they didn't even respond to the stuff, and that's why I stopped all that stuff. I did not mention to the town hall meeting. I wish I would have. I would have had. Excuse me. Let me try. I did not mention at the town hall meeting, and I wish I would have, is the people who live outside the city limits might have or want to say about this policy. The residents who live within the city pay for the police services. Those that live outside the city do not pay for these services. If this policy were changed, there would be times where AST was requesting SPD to respond to some of the calls. I hope this helps clarify any comments I made at the town hall meeting that you have my permission to share this thing here, with anybody that wants to read it. That with those misunderstanding me, or I misspoke at the meeting. And I think what he said, what people thought he said was that it's not their problem, it's Sue and PD's problem that were there, which didn't help that meeting at all. So he's not apologizing. He says he may have been misspoken or misunderstood. So there is a policy, and this is the policy. And it's just not put down in written form. And the reason why it's not put down in written form is police departments work different than fire departments or something else. Every case we go to, everything they do is different. Everything that tells us we're gonna have to respond to this another way. We don't have set ways to respond to anything. If we start making policy, then we'll restrict ourselves, and then we might even have to violate our policy to be able to answer a specific call that comes up to we had to do. So it's not in the best interest, even though we have an understanding here between us and ASD, it's not in our best interest to have a written policy that restricts us to do these. How many things do you put in this policy over and over again? You know, you could violate policy a lot, but if you leave it the way it is, there is a policy. We adhere to it. I'll make sure that people adhere to it. This is how we're going to do it, and it's a safe way. And when I talked to the lieutenant today, and I wanted to remind him about that, he said, "It's a good policy. We need to stick with it." The former captain of E Detachment, Pete Bernard, I was with him at a DOT meeting here last Friday, and I brought this up to him, and he says, and he agrees. He said, he cannot believe, one, that was even said, although it wasn't said, and it's been apologized. But he likes the way we did this policy. He and I agreed to this policy, and it worked. And it still could work. It still does work, actually. So that's a long explanation of everything here, but I wanted to give you the history, show how we got where we're at today, and it's not that there's no history or no MOU. There is a understanding and a policy. We'll respond to AST when they ask us to for only people crimes, and they have to respond and meet us, and we're not going to be the first people on the scene. Same thing applies to us to them. My thing is to keep them safe, but I'm not going to send my officer in without them being there too, because the same applies to my guys too. I don't know if that helps or not, but.
That does help. I just have a question. What's the converse? Like, what do they say for if you call them needing assistance? What does the converse look like? They'll respond if they're able inside city limits?
Yes. Same thing as we respond if we can. If we're on a call, we can't respond. They will contact us, say the troopers are out there, whatever, some crime out there. We need you. Can you back us up, please? But if we're out in town doing a crime that we need an officer to here, we're not going to be able to respond to that. It's a call to a call, and that's how we make it work. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead. Yep.
So we asked and I inquired, there's no MOU in the state of Alaska. So Alaska's a lot different than the lower 48 in that we don't have counties, the boroughs. Every post-certified officer in the state can actually service anywhere in the state of Alaska. So the MOUs generally come with like service agreements. So like if this was a county, our police officers would need an MOU to work outside of our jurisdiction. In Alaska, they don't require that. So we didn't find anybody that actually has a formal written MOU to provide service. And our attorney says that if we do that and say, oh, we're obligated by MOU to respond out there, then we take on liability for being responsible for not coming to calls.
Well, I will say the good thing about requiring council to write an agenda statement is I don't see Councilmember Butts in what he's bringing before council asking for an MOU. I think it's just a written policy that you're looking for right now.
And there again too, so what, because I'm saying there too is, you're using the terminology, this is our policy. I mean, if we were just to have that there, so when, God forbid, something happens and we go to court, where's your policy? Well, we don't have a policy.
There's nobody in the state that has that. Nobody has a policy. With police departments. Fire departments have it all over the place. Police departments do not. And there's so many ways we do things, respond to things, and how we work together. You're going to restrict yourself to certain things and not be able to do that. Here it's free to make a choice. A sergeant or me or somebody can make the decision not to do that. And the reason why is because we don't have the people or we're already working something. When we had the homicide here, I mean, AST and we worked together pretty tight through that whole thing. And so we have a great relationship. We don't need to, and even Pete Bernard told me, don't do an MOU, Tom. You know what that's going to mean. And he told me that's a former captain over there.
And I can understand that too. And maybe there again too, and so my intent for this is if we don't require a policy, then that's what we need to find out that decision. Maybe it's something where it's not as binding as a policy if there's guidelines, or if there's a standard operating procedure, or something else like this or two, where it may not be as binding, but something that helps to guide the process, because now when you leave and a new chief comes in, there's nothing. He can do whatever he wants.
He can do whatever he wants, and chances are he'll do what I've already done.
True, but
yeah,
we don't have that. Yeah.
And the guidelines are almost as good as what you're wanting, or what you'd like to see, or what you're concerned about. But as long as we go by what we have rules to do here, again, we're only gonna do people crimes, and we're only gonna go if they ask us. We will not do it on our own, which used to happen before I got here. And if we can go and help them. And it's only to augment their services and to keep them safe. That's the only reason we do it. And they do the same thing for us. They only come to help us and to augment our services when we need their help. And we're a pretty good team, actually, that we work together well, so.
Are there further comments? I have a comment. I think this is just a smaller, like, so when we look at where we want to go and why we're discussing something, I think we're obviously discussing this because Seward has a crime problem, state of Alaska has a crime problem, and, a drug problem. I mean, there's all these things happening, and we're looking at inside city limits and outside city limits. And, when it was water, we, because water doesn't respect the boundaries, so we came up with the flood board, and came up with the flood service area. That's not what we're doing tonight, but I think there's an opportunity, and I think you would be the man to do it, is to talk about, not now, but, I think we are ready for a work session to talk about how we can comprehensively address crime in the whole area. We did hear at that Machiki meeting that while they used to have 2 positions filled and they had a number of vacancies, now we're up to 5, which I respect that number. However, in the same breath, they talked about how the service area has expanded. So we're talking 5 between Hope and Girdwood and, Seward Highway. So they might say 5, but they're really stretched very thin. So, I know it's not on tonight's council agenda, but at some point, I don't know if we could have a work session with the community, with Seward PD, with the troopers, and talk about community watches, Crime Stoppers, having a fund for tips, and people pointing out their friends have $10,000 pool to start giving reward money. And I don't know if you could speak to that and how we might be able to move forward.
Well, when I was a trooper, the deputy commander at Palmer, I ran the crime watch. Sorry, I'm tired tonight. I had a long week. Crime watch going on. We did all. I was the guy that ran the program and sent out the awards to people and put all the stuff together. So we could do that. But I will tell you what the real answer here, and I think the troopers will tell you the same thing. The borough probably someday needs to step up and establish a police department because it's getting too much for the troopers. And here's the other problem, and all my IACP meeting, International Association Chiefs of Police meetings, every meeting I've gone to in the last 16 years, every meeting, recruitment and retention has always been the top of the thing, and how do we recruit officers and how do we retain them after we recruit them. That has been a serious problem. We've had applicants applying for this department here. There's no way they were ever going to get hired for this department. No way. Number one, I'm not going to do it because of my ethics. And number 2, Alaska Police Standard Council is going to tell me to go forget about it. They're not going to let us hire them. So it's a difficult time right now to find cops. And I mean, I've never seen it this way, and I've done this almost 50 years. I've never seen it like this. I was telling somebody today, and when I applied to be a trooper in 1970, I was competing with between 700 and 800 people, and they only hire 30 people a shot, and if you don't make the top 30, you don't get hired. But there's the next round down the line. There's these rest of those 700 people are down, and you're lucky to get 2 or 3 anymore.
So I think part of my discussion tonight here was, I don't want to put anybody like under a microscope or anything else like this or two, is if the city manager, legal, and you guys are the experts in this or two, if you feel that we're in a good spot, that's fine. If you feel that we should be developing something else, that's fine. If you feel that, we should be lobbying the borough or something else, that's fine. It's just, I'm looking at those three people to give us something to saying, we're good.
Yeah, and Councilmember Bunce, we have discussed this with the attorney, and the three of us did discuss it. He agreed with us, we're doing fine. And you probably ought to know this, but I am so paranoid about getting sued about anything. I keep everybody above board. There are rules that we follow that we will do, and we won't do anything less than that.
Can I ask the clerk a question? When's the next time our borough representative will be here? Do you know?
Well, he's in Fairbanks now, so he's just on a monthly schedule.
So
It would be
first meeting
February
of
10th.
February.
Yeah.
So I think let's try to remember to ask him about our concerns and talk about, that was my opinion at that Machiki meeting. Like, city was there, state was there, but the borough wasn't there, and these are borough citizens. So let's make sure that those concerns are brought to his attention, and even the borough mayor.
And having a police department, as you probably know by looking at the budget, it's an expensive proposition. It's not cheap. And back in the 70s, it was a little cheaper, well, a lot cheaper than it is today, because of the constant training we have to keep us out of a viable situation. I mean, this job is complicated. It's not like it used to be. So the borough, if they want to take that on, I'll support them all the way. And I know the troopers will too, because they just don't have enough people. They just don't have enough applicants, and neither do we. So.
There's definitely more to come. Vice Mayor?
Speaking sort of for the borough, though, you know that they do not have policing powers. So that would have to be something that would be voted in and a big change.
Yeah, you have to bring that to the
like animal control.
Yeah, which didn't fly.
It was a fight, yeah.
So, I wish you would have gotten that too, by the way.
So there's definitely more to come on this. Councilmember Butts, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss? Okay, thank you, Chief. And like I said, there's definitely more to come. I think we need to think about this issue in a larger context. Informational items and reports, ongoing city projects and goal list, city clerk report, October, November city financials. Are there any comments on what's provided in the packet? Any comments on what's provided? No? Okay, so next item on the agenda is 11, council comments. I'll start to the right of the dais, if that's fine with, I'll start with Councilmember Baclan.
I'll keep it short because we had a long meeting today. Thank you for everyone who spoke today. Thank you for administration who works hard for us all the time. And we went over the wage study today, and hopefully we can get more moving on the wage study. This week on Friday, the Seward Pride Alliance and I are hosting a chili cook-off at the Yukon Bar at 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And all the proceeds will be going to the American Cancer Society of the Kenai. It is $10 to try some of Seward's best chili. So come on down and try it out. And like I said, the fundraiser is being held by the Pride Alliance with all the donations going to the American Cancer Society. Thank you.
Thank you. Well received. To the left of the dais, Councilmember Butts.
First off, I'd like to congratulate Coach Beck and the whole basketball team too. I think that is really awesome that they did that one too. There again, the polar bear jump's going on this weekend. Call people, get out there too as part of that one too. And then congratulate Lee for being here for so long as all part of that one too. Excuse me. And lastly, I would like to petition the mayor as the chief executive of this board to either reprimand, censure, or ask for removal of Councilmember Lane for leaving an established council meeting without notice.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilmember Butts. Councilmember Osenga.
I was just going to say congratulations to the Seward Silvers basketball team, borough champs. That's awesome, especially if they turned it around in 1 year. That's just really awesome job. And also congratulations to Mr. Pileski. Yes, he was a teacher I had in high school in the 80s. I've known him forever, and it's a deserved award for him. So that's really, I was really once again, glad to be here to see him getting acknowledged.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor McClure?
Yes, I'd like to, of course, congratulate my friend Lee Pileski. I've known him since I was 14, so, it goes on. And also the basketball team, that was something I wasn't aware of, that they had won. And I don't keep track of the middle school as much, people don't, and so that was really nice. On a personal note, I'd like to point out that community choir begins rehearsing 6 o'clock on Thursday at the Methodist Church. You can get a hold of me if you're interested, because I've got some great music planned. I have a sad note that if you had not heard, and I checked with the mayor if it was okay to say, but Riley Burns had passed today. And I know, I hate to be a downer, but yes, and it's something that we should all be aware of and hold his family, I don't know his family, but hold him in our thoughts and prayers. And I believe I concur with Councilmember Butts on the inappropriateness of leaving a council meeting like that without at least saying why you're leaving, so at least to that extent.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'll just have a couple things. I want to note that the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District held a forum last week, and they're out of Kenai, and for many years the forum was just held in Kenai. They started under Tim Dillon's leadership to go to different communities, and this is the first time it's been held in Seward. There were 122 attendees at various times during the day, and that's the largest on record. So that really shows, that was a good influx of money. It started early enough in the morning where people came the night before, and then good turnout even, on the other side of the peninsula. There was a lot of great speakers, 18 total speakers that day, including our very own JAG. Avtech spoke, so it was very well received. Hillcorp came, Railroad was there, UAA, and then 2020 census and the importance of that. So I wanted to mention that. I want to say definitely Polar Bear Jump, get out and enjoy, and also shop local. There's a lot of vendors that will be open this weekend. Let's show that we support local community and go out there and spend your money. Just tell your significant other that it's your civic duty to spend money. And then, I feel like I need to respond. Thank you, Councilmember Butts. Thank you, Vice Mayor. I did hear your recommendation, and I'm not going to speak to it right now, but it has been heard. Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizen comments. There's no sign-in for this comment period, and you have 5 minutes per speaker. So I'll recognize Michelle if you would like to speak, please. And just state outside or inside city limits, and then thank you for coming.
Michelle Cobble, outside city limits, and I want to speak to the police officers and whether or not they respond outside of the city. I have been the victim of domestic violence twice in the past year, and twice it has taken state troopers over 2 hours to respond. Twice the city has sent city officers, and they have staged at the bottom of my driveway for 2 hours while I managed to prevent my husband from killing my son and I. So, if you think that having them stage at the bottom of the driveway is going to prevent the city from being sued, you're mistaken. Because had my son and I been killed, I assure you, my family would sue the city. It is my understanding from the head of the troopers that I spoke to the other night at the meeting that there was an
Mrs.
agreement.
Cobble, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'll just have you continue to look at the dais when you're making
Okay.
your comments, please. Thank you.
My understanding is that there was an understanding between the city and the troopers at one time. And there was an incident where a city officer responded to an in-progress suicide attempt. The city officer responded by himself. He came into contact with some blood that was considered contaminated. He sued the city, and the city changed their policy and decided that they were no longer going to respond to calls outside of the city limits. So there was one time when the city did respond outside of the city limits, and the city changed their policy because they got sued by an employee, according to the state troopers. When somebody calls for help, you should come help them. If you're a police officer, you are armed, you're trained, and your purpose is to serve and protect. And when someone calls and says that there is someone that is out of their mind, and 911 can hear you, and they can hear that person out of their mind, and they can hear the torture that's going on with the person on the phone, torturing your animals, trying to get you to open the door. And they're begging you not to open the door because you want to. And you have your neighbors calling and saying, why aren't you here? Why isn't anybody going in? Do we have to go in and save her? And the troopers are saying, no, we're on the way. But they're coming from Girdwood. That's a problem. The city has a problem. And to say that you have to protect your officers and you're not going to protect me because I live outside of the city is ludicrous. I own Brown and Hawkins. I pay city taxes. I live in this city. I function in this city. This is my home. And nobody's going to help me. So, what do? I pick up a gun and I kill him myself? I didn't do that. I called and asked for help. Twice. And the troopers come from Girdwood while the city police sit at the bottom of my driveway? 2 city police, not 1. 2 officers sit at the bottom of my driveway. So I don't know how many officers are on duty at a time, but if there's only 2 officers on duty, then there was nobody protecting Seward while they sat at the bottom of my driveway for 2.5 hours waiting on a trooper to get there so that they could follow him up. And they didn't follow him up because they were the first ones in my house. Because when I saw them, I recognized them and said, why are you guys here? I don't expect to see city cops in my neighborhood. And they said, well, we're here to help you. 2.5 hours later.
That's not acceptable. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time?
Hi, Becky Dunn, Inside the City. I want to offer the condolences also, and congratulations for the basketball team. And also speak about the police outside the city and the crime meeting that we had. It's good that we're finally working together, and I saw many familiar faces there that are here now, city council members, mayor, manager, some people from the audience, and I don't remember any Seward officers speaking, but I could be wrong. I know the city manager did, and I know the troopers were. There were 2 troopers right up front speaking. And I do want to speak about an incident that happened a few years ago. Some people still remember this being in the newspaper. A woman was driving down the road because I left my milk there at her house, my mother, and somebody shot right behind her head. And it went through one window and out the other on the road. The idiots were target practicing by the, it was just before Bear Creek Fire Department. To the right, there's a, I can't think of the name of the neighborhood there, but they were target practicing toward the bike trail and toward the highway. First of all, if you can hear people talking, don't shoot toward them unless you want to kill them. And they put a bullet right through her vehicle, and she pulled over thinking she popped a tire or something had hit the truck, and then when she noticed that, she couldn't get her phone to work, so she pulled over to the Bear Creek Fire Department, and she went in there, and they called the troopers and tried to get somebody out there, tried to get permission to shut down traffic. They weren't allowed to shut off traffic. I realized something's not right because she's not here yet. So I got dressed, took my kid to the babysitter, and by then she had called and told me where she was, and I made it to Bear Creek Fire Department, and still we couldn't shut down traffic. Nobody could. And you could hear bullets going across the highway, and I'd see families I know going by. And so Cole Peterson said a couple of swear words, got in his vehicle and drove down there and had him sitting down lecturing them about gun safety when the trooper arrived. And I actually beat the trooper there too. And but there does need to be something worked out there. I really do believe the highway could have been shut down that day. Cole probably saved somebody's life that day. And I'm not sure where money comes from from the different police organizations, whether it's state or sales tax or what, but I did want to point out that all the years I've lived outside the city, I spend a hell of a lot less inside the city now because I drive a lot less. Oh my goodness, I fill up once a month. If anybody lives outside the city, they could have, yeah, it's just incredible. Yeah, I only fill up less than once a month. So there's only one gas station in town. There's only one school to go to unless you want to homeschool, and the school gets money for your kid being there. So it is a community, so it's important that we all work together on this. And then it's been brought up now, and people are aware that we do have a shortage on troopers, and it could take time for them to report. And I'm going to refrain from turning my head right now because an officer got online, social media, was advocating towards annexation by saying that single women outside are real targets because it can take 2 hours for somebody to get to you. And he actually brought up rapists. And I complained about that. But it's like, well, if they didn't know now, they know now, and before. I think that was very unprofessional. And so between that and the meeting, it has been brought up. So we do need to work together as a community to work on this. And I realize it's a liability. And I'd also like to see if there's another cop hired. We need 2 officers at night. We really do, for their safety, for situations like this, and for even inside the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else interested? Thank you.
Bruce Jaffa, outside the city. I try to bring a couple things together. I was going to mention the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development confab that I attended. It's the first of that type that I have attended. I've been in business for many, many years, but sitting still in a room with a lot of other people like that was unique, and I got a lot out of it. One of the big things that I saw was some of our local representatives, some of our local citizens who represented us, Clint Draper, Lindy Guernsey from Moose Pass, and Tate, and others, and it's wonderful to see that we're developing people in our own community that are becoming leaders and movers in our community. The chief mentioned Jake Mlinarik. I knew his dad from Cooper Landing. Mr. Schaefermeyer in the police department. Again, local citizens that have made good and are helping us in return. When Spring Creek was started, the troopers and the state pledged additional support law enforcement to this community, understanding that a institution like Spring Creek would bring more activity, if you will, to the area, and it would justify more troopers. For a while, that was true. We had more troopers. I think in current budgets, there have been less and less. I'm distressed to hear that it's so difficult to recruit law enforcement. It's a unique profession. It takes a very dedicated and a special person. I've known a lot of police over the years, and it is a special person. They're out there. How they're recruited, I'm not sure. I think that one problem we have today, and I'm really taken by the story of stress, personal stress, and the difficulty that's expressed by both the local police and the troopers. But we have a system today where we hold people to a standard that's almost unattainable. There are in this state Good Samaritan laws for a whole lot of activities. This needs to be extended to the police departments who can respond outside of their immediate jurisdiction without the jeopardy that they would have, and I think the chief is correct, to protect his department and to protect the city. But this is an action for our Senator McKitchie and our legislature, and it's as simple as saying, let's allow a Good Samaritan protection for first responders. The fire department has it. If you stop along the road and help somebody and give them CPR, and you're only marginally trained and you kill them, you're covered. You're covered as a Good Samaritan. You tried. I recommend you get the training. It's a selfless thing that you do. It's one of the few things in your life that you can learn to do that is totally for somebody else.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time?
Cindy Eklund, Inside City Limits.
You're just getting away from the mouse.
I am, that's true. One comment on the crime thing, so I guess if you live outside the city limits and dial 911 and request a state trooper at the same time, ask them to call for a city police officer to back up. At least you have another witness. I'm not sure what else can be done, but I guess you have to ask. So please ask. And I want to thank the council and the administration for their work, and thank you for amending the ordinance. I have asked for an excuse from attending my Borough Planning Commission meeting on the 27th, so I will be here when this comes back before you. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Mrs. Griswold?
Carol Griswold, City Limits. So I had a couple questions here. I'm really thrilled about the Boys and Girls Club agreement. I think that's a spectacular change. We've seen so many positive changes, and this is one of them, very positive. I do have a question about the financing. Some mention was made of, how we're going to support this. And I've always wondered why we don't do it, and maybe we do. Do we do a sliding scale so that those can afford it, will pay for these services? And I think if we're not doing that, we should consider that. I know we subsidize a lot of services for people inside and outside city limits, but as a Seward taxpayer, I don't feel that it's fair that the people who use our services and can afford to pay for them are not asked to help pay. So I just want to throw that out and see if you'd consider that. Instead of just 50 cents a day or whatever, it's pretty cheap. I was wondering about our city attorney charges. She was on the phone from the beginning to almost the end at that last meeting in December on the telephone, and I was just wondering if she charged us for that. Every 10-minute, if you only use her for 2 minutes, she hits a 10-minute increment. So I'm really curious if she charged us for her hanging on until we had just a few questions to ask her way along into the meeting. And to Council Member McClure's comment that it wouldn't hurt to ask her about this and that, it will hurt us a lot to ask her for her advice or her opinion, or just run it by her, she'd be very happy to charge us for that, and we will pay plenty. So I want to caution council to be very, very careful about what can of worms you open for her to look at, because she will bring it up. In that line, I was also wondering if council has proceeded with a request for proposals for legal counsel. I'd like to know if that status, what that status is. I think we deserve a different legal counsel. And I'm glad on the, I'm sorry, I had the wrong, it's ordinance 20001. I had the wrong number for that. But you are proceeding according to our city code, and our city code is not correct. So I'd like you to be very careful when you proceed with a spot zone and an illegal spot zone. And I wrote about this quite extensively in the planning and zoning packet. A lot of information there, and you can go online and just look up Griswold versus the City of Homer. Very important information. That is the ruling law for Alaska. And many other states have taken that ruling and incorporated it into their law as well. It's really important legislation. And we would be remiss if we followed our current outdated city code. So I encourage you to become more educated. I wish our attorney had brought that up earlier. It would have saved that Board of Adjustment hearing, would have saved a lot of unnecessary time and effort. So please become educated on that and consider that very, very, very well. I really appreciate all the work you're doing. You guys work together so well. So many very important issues have come up just tonight, and lots of good discussion. So I thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else looking to speak at this time? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, Council and Administration response to citizen comments. Administration, did you have any comments?
I would say our attorney contract allows for one meeting, travel and attendance a month is at no charge. So I'm not sure if she comes twice, we do get billed for that second meeting. And the legal RFPs are due January 31st. So those have been put out, noticed, and we should be hearing about that. I do agree with our police policies. When Tom leaves, I'm not sure what the next chief's views will be. I know a lot of chiefs who don't let their people work outside their jurisdiction. I do think we're in the business of saving lives and helping people, and that's a difficult thing to weigh. I want to apologize to Norm, because during the economic development luncheon, he came to PACAB and they ate all the lunch and I didn't send him a sandwich. So I owe him a lunch. I'm sorry. That's all I have.
If there's, I'll just answer a couple questions. In regards to paying at Boys and Girls Club, there's a section that says Boys and Girls Club can charge a fee per participation in any programs. Boys and Girls Club shall make a substantial portions of its programs little or no cost to Seward families, although basic membership fees may be required for many Seward residents. Participation in these programs shall not be denied solely on the basis of financial hardship. And I can just personally say that when my kids went to Boys and Girls Club, there was a fee involved, and that they, as far as I know, look for grants to provide funding for kids that can't afford it. So Mrs. Griswold, responding to that, you might check with that program to see what those funds will now look like. And then also just clarify that yes, the RFP went out for attorney services. And one more item, sorry, I've been talking a lot this meeting, but you know, we have quite a few meetings coming up, especially I think the big one is going to be that CIP meeting. So I want administration to have plenty of time to focus on that. But I also don't think it's remiss. I think we need to have a meeting about public safety and crime. So I don't know if we can start thinking about that. Nothing needs to be set tonight, but maybe at the next meeting, if I bring forward an agenda statement, we can start talking about a date and what that might look like. But are there any other responses or comments? Did you have adequate response or comments? Is there anyone else on the dais that would like to respond to public comments? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll adjourn this meeting at 10:28. Thank you.